All right, hello everyone. I am just getting this all set up and muting you guys so it's not too loud. 1 second. Nope. Sorry, they're still coming in.
Yeah, we might.
We'll get started here very shortly, just waiting for the last people to come through. If you guys could just keep yourselves on mute, we'll go over all of that, but just so there's not too much background sound and we can all hear very clearly. Okay. All right, perfect. I think that's everyone. One more person. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. We want to start pretty promptly. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and attending our Circadia Zoom class hosted by us, California Skincare Supply. We know how valuable your time is, and we're so excited to have you join us here today.
My name's Kelly, and this is my daughter, Julia Anderson, and we are a 3-generation female family-owned company, which I started with my mom all the way back in 1990. We were born out of the necessity to find the best brands for our spa at the time. In the late 1980s, the brands available to us for a licensed esthetician were much more limited, and because we specialized in acne, we needed a very results-driven brand. And then this long quest ultimately led to the birth of California Skincare Supply. And if you fast forward 30 years, California Skincare Supply now distributes over 30 professional skincare brands that we love and we feel are extremely effective for everything the esthetician needs for both her retail sales and her professional back bar.
This, of course, leads us to Circadia by Dr. Pugliese. California Skincare Supply was so honored to become Circadia's distributor in 2006. We love so many things about this brand, but especially the fact that they are so committed to bringing you the latest technology and skin science through amazing education and innovative product development.
A little background about Circadia for our new clients that have joined us here. Circadia, of course, is a professional skincare brand based on the skin and body's natural circadian rhythm. Chronobiology, which is the science of defending skin from environmental damage during the day, and stimulating repair mechanisms during sleep is at the core of Circadia's philosophy. Circadia formulations combined pure botanicals, stem cells, second-generation vitamins, and innovative peptide technology to achieve optimal skin health. Circadia's specialty treatment products also utilize all of these technologies to address multiple skin conditions, including rosacea, pigmentation, acne, dehydration, and aging.
Today's class, we're going to take a very in-depth look at Circadia's home care regimens and treatments, and we'll teach key concepts in innovative skincare, such as next-generation peptide technology, glycation, stem cells, vitamins, and acids. Then, of course, we're going to be giving ourselves the SPArty with the Circadia at-home facial mask and mixology box that we have previously shipped to you. Before we hand off this class to our honored guest educators, I want to remind you guys that we are having an awesome sale for all of our class attendees. The entire Circadia brand will be 15% off through this Wednesday at midnight. You can find this sale only on our brand new site that we launched last week, CaliforniaSkincareSupply.com. We've already emailed you the coupon code, but once again, it's Circadia Zoom in all capitals.
So at checkout, please use this coupon code to take advantage of these fantastic savings. If you are a current CSS online account, you will have to create a new password. This is super easy to do. When you go in to log in, just click Forgot Password, and then you will get directions for your account. If you are new to our new CaliforniaSkincareSupply.com website, then you'll have to register, create an account, and follow the directions to upload both your esthetician's license and your California seller's permit.
So obviously, because this is a Zoom class, questions are going to be a little bit different. I ask that you guys all stay on mute during the class, and if you have any questions at all, just type them into the chat and we'll answer them as we go.
Julia and I will monitor those questions for you, and we will relay them to both George and Caitlin as well. So without further ado, we have us joining today, George Abel and Caitlin Macy Sandoval, both National Education Directors for Circadia. We have known them both for many years, and they are both highly respected educators in our field. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. And to all the attendees, all of our staff here at California Skincare are here to help you grow your business, and help you grow your sales with Circadia.
Take it away, guys.
All right, thank you so much, Kelly and Julia. Yeah, so as they mentioned, you have myself and Caitlin Macy on, who's going to be kind of conducting this training for you all. So just going to tell you how the training is going to go is we're going to start out with lecture theory. Here in a second, I'm going to share my screen so you guys can actually follow along on the actual presentation that we're going through. So the class that we have today is treating skin conditions with Circadia, pretty much. So we are going to do an overview of a skin condition. So we'll really talk about the symptom of that skin condition, but then we're also going to address utilizing Circadia products and how to treat that skin condition on there. At the end of the whole entire theory, the lecture part should be about an hour, hour and a half. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break. And during that break, we're just going to prep for the actual facial. So you guys all have a mask and mixology box in there. So we're going to talk about that mask and mixology box on ways that you can change it, manipulate it, add different ingredients to it. So almost like you're going to be an at-home chemist with those products there. So we will talk through the mixology portion of it. So just really quick, I just want to see if you guys could just type in the chat area if you're familiar with Circadia, just so we can see that that chat is working. And then I will let Caitlin speak while I share my screen.
All right, and just note too, we do know that we're going to be presenting quite a lot of information in a relatively short amount of time. So if there are any questions that we don't get answered, please email them over to Julie and Kelly, and we'll make sure that we'll get them answered for you. We will be pausing after each section, so you'll be able to ask those questions. But the more questions that we have come in, the more we're able to gauge your understanding of the material, and then know also for future classes what you will want us to lecture and teach on. So we're super excited to be here and spending the morning with you, and we're just going to go ahead and jump right in because again, we've got tons of information to go over.
All right, just want to confirm, can everyone see my screen? Kelly, if you're chatting, you might be muted.
There we go.
Oh, they're unmuted. Okay, I just wanted to let you know that chat's definitely working. A lot of the attendees are super excited to be here.
A lot of new clients.
A lot of new clients to Circadia, some familiar with some of it, but everybody's really excited to be here.
Awesome, super exciting. So I'm actually going to turn off my camera right now, but then I will pull it back up right before we get started the actual demo. I am the type of person that pays attention more to myself versus what I'm teaching, and I do not want that to happen. So I am going to just shut that off and then we'll get started.
Perfect.
Okay, so as I mentioned a second ago, the training today is going to be called Treating Skin Conditions with Advanced Skin Science, or Treating Skin Conditions with Circadia. So the main skin conditions that we're going to really start talking and addressing today is we're going to talk through pigmentation, we're going to talk through acne, and then we're also going to talk through aging as well. So you'll notice myself and Caitlin, when we do present together, we make it more of a conversation versus kind of lecture on there as well, or kind of super robotic. So you'll see myself and Caitlin kind of almost more like a podcast versus just like a traditional lecture on there. So myself and Caitlin have been teaching for about 6 years together. So we'll go ahead and let her kind of get started with just this initial slide on pigmentation.
Okay, so when you're looking at this particular slide, this is actually a punch biopsy of a younger client, and you are really looking at the melanocyte here, which you can see is circled with the M next to it. And you can tell that this is the melanocyte because it actually stains clear, the cytoplasm, and you'll notice the melanocyte inside of that clear cytoplasm. So this is really what we're looking at as the main function of pigmentation. So just note that this is the cell that we're looking at that really is the biggest trigger for the amount of pigmentation that you're seeing on somebody's skin. We're going to go into how skin color differs and why you see different skin tones throughout the range of your clients.
So I kind of want to just briefly kind of go over through this cartoon image of what a melanocyte is first. So I'm going to go through each parts of this melanocyte and then we'll break it down even farther independently. However, we all know that our body produces pigmentation as a form of protection. So now we got to figure out on how that pigmentation is actually forming to really know how we can address or slow down melanin production. So all pigmentation, it's going to get converted in through a pigmentation or in through melanin or through a process or a couple of different processes that we'll talk about here shortly. However, let's just break apart the skin cell that produces the pigmentation, which is called the melanocyte. So the best way to think about this melanocyte, I'm going to utilize this analogy, utilizing a factory, a truck, and also kind of roads on there. So the best way to think about it is a melanocyte is going to be a skin cell. So for this analogy, let's think of that melanocyte that you see right there, that larger dark compact sphere right there. That is called a melanocyte. So let's think about that melanocyte as a factory. What this factory produces is melanin on there. So then if you look at these smaller compact spheres right here, the smaller compact spheres, those are going to be called melanosomes. So a melanosome is pretty much going to be, think of it for this analogy like a truck or a vehicle, but what's in that truck or vehicle is melanin. It's pigmentation on there as well. Then if you look at these little kind of finger-like projections that are coming up from that melanocyte, kind of think of those, what they are called are dendrites. However, think of them as like the roads, the road that is going to deliver the pigmentation up on there. So we got melanocyte factory, we got these dendrites, which are going to be the roads, these melanosomes, which are going to be the vehicle or also the truck that's housing melanin or housing pigmentation. So all melanin is going to start out from an amino acid that's called tyrosine. So I'm sure we have all heard tyrosinase inhibitors. So a tyrosinase inhibitor, if you're thinking of tyrosine as the amino acid that's going to get converted into melanin on there, tyrosine is the enzyme that's going to start to make that process happen on there as well. Then as you're looking at these pink compact spheres that you see here, these are our keratinocytes, our protein or our skin cells. So our keratinocytes, our skin cells, they're never in the same place at once. They're constantly moving up to the surface of the skin. So by the time these keratinocytes get to the surface of the skin, all you're seeing is dead protein and also melanin or also pigmentation on there. So I like to utilize this when I'm talking to consumers. Every single time that we do an exfoliation on the skin, we're removing surface protein that's housing the melanin. So every single facial we do can be considered a brightening facial. The reason why it's a brightening facial is because we're removing those surface proteins that is housing the pigmentation on there as well. So notice, as these keratinocytes, as they're constantly moving up to the surface, they are going to pull in the melanin from those melanosomes. So by the time this gets to the surface of the skin, that's going to be all it is on there as well. So there's different ways that we can address the melanocyte by slowing down melanin production. So one of the ways is we can utilize ingredients that are called tyrosinase inhibitors. So like vitamin C, there's different signaling peptides that are tyrosinase inhibitors, kojic acid. We also have like lactic acid as well. So pretty much a tyrosinase inhibitor is just going to stop the enzymatic process of converting tyrosine into pigmentation on there. We can also utilize ingredients that are considered to be melanosome transfer inhibitors. So if this is a melanosome, and we know a melanosome is the vehicle that's housing the pigmentation, a melanosome transfer inhibitor is almost like I'm putting a roadblock between the dendrite and the keratinocyte. So now it's not going to be able to deposit pigmentation into those keratinocytes on there. So that's another way. However, the biggest way to treat or address pigmentation is always in a protection type of form. If we can stop the body from even signaling tyrosinase inhibitor or signaling the melanocyte or melanogenesis, that's one of the best ways we can treat pigmentation. So me personally, when I am addressing pigmentation with my personal clientele base, if they're not willing to utilize sun protection, stay out of the sun, anything like that, then it's going to be, it's the best way to kind of protect the skin that way as well. Caitlin, do you have anything to add on this one?
No, I think that's, and we'll get into more detail on melanogenesis, on melanosome transfer inhibitor and tyrosinase inhibitors later in the presentation, but there's different pathways of pigment that you can address, as George had mentioned, but really accumulating all of those different ways in one product is the best way to treat pigmentation. So we'll go through some product knowledge as well and make sure that we are letting you know which ingredients are addressing what part of this pigmentation process.
And then we do have 2 quick questions. Yes, you can get a recording of this Zoom class. We are recording it, so if anything comes up and you guys have to log off, we can always send you that recording. And then we did get a request to speak a little bit slower.
Awesome, thank you, Julia. Yeah, absolutely.
No problem.
Okay, so can you hear me okay? All right, we have to keep in mind that skin color differs for different reasons. We have heard before or in the past that some people say that those who have lighter skin tones have less melanocytes, and that's not necessarily the case. So you have to keep in mind that one melanocyte is actually responsible for pigmentating 36 keratinocytes. So that's 1 MU is responsible for pigmentating 36 keratinocytes. So it's actually not the number of melanocytes that creates different skin tones. And we'll talk about what makes different skin colors in the next upcoming slides. But just note that a melanocyte is responsible for pigmentating 36 keratinocytes that are surrounding it within that area. Now, melanocytes can, if you see any sort of hypopigmentation, melanocytes are considered to be migratory cells. So when they are first, or when a baby is in utero, they're actually starting out as brain stem cells, and they migrate to different areas of the body in utero. So there are some dermatologists that say that the melanocyte should actually be considered a stem cell. But because it's a migratory cell, it has the ability to repigment other areas. So if a melanocyte does die in a certain area due to damage or excessive exposure to the sun, there is potential to repigment that area because the cell can migrate to those areas. On the negative side of the melanocyte being a migratory cell is that if it does become damaged itself and also sees some mutations, it can very quickly migrate to other areas of the body, and that's why skin cancer is so incredibly dangerous. So just knowing those little facts about the melanocyte and about the cell that is producing pigment. If we go to the next slide, George, unless you've got anything you want to add here, we want to give you a little bit of just background information on pigmentation. And this first part is really important, especially as us as providers. We really want to make sure that we understand the difference between constitutive and facultative pigmentation. And we also want to make sure that we know what products we're using and what kind of pigment inhibitors and what they're focusing on. So constitutive, think of this as your genetic pigment. I'm Korean, and I have this genetic pigment of being a Fitzpatrick 3. If you have parents who are Fitzpatrick 5, you're most likely to be a Fitzpatrick 5. And that's all relative to your constitutive pigment. Your facultative pigmentation, this is pigment that we've accumulated from outside sources. So this is from ultraviolet radiation, different hormone fluctuations, chronic inflammation. That's all pigment that we actually have had induced and triggered from outside sources. So if you're using a product on somebody and you do have constitutive lighteners, say they love their freckles, and then all of a sudden you put them on a lightener that is going to address constitutive pigment. their freckles are going to lighten and they might not like that. So you want to make sure when you're talking through the products and you're looking at different ingredient profiles that you understand if they're working on constitutive, facultative, or both. And you want to make sure that you are prescribing the appropriate products. So as providers, we're mainly focusing on ingredients that are going to address the facultative pigmentation. And again, that's pigment that we have accumulated throughout the years of damage. Now, when you're looking at pigmentation in general, you're looking at either eumelanin or pheomelanin. And it's interesting for those who are lower on the Fitzpatrick scale, whether you have blonde hair, red hair, most of the time that's showing up as either yellow or red pigment. And eumelanin is showing up more as brown or black pigment. Now, it's important to remember that even if you're showing pheomelanin and it's showing up as a red spot, you're still going to treat it the same way you would treat brown or black pigment. So for those who are lighter skin type and they have acne scarring, but it's showing up more as red, you still want to help obviously reduce the inflammation, but you want to treat that red pigment as if it were brown or black pigment, because eumelanin and pheomelanin have the same pathways of pigment that George had mentioned in the beginning, and you want to address all of those pathways.
All right, so kind of just to summarize this one really quick is, so there's two things, big things that you have to take in consideration when you are addressing pigmentation. Is this genetic pigmentation on there, or is this pigmentation that we have done to ourselves? So a lot of the times we do think about when we're treating skin as skin type, skin condition, you can kind of utilize that same example when you're talking about constitutive and facultative. Think of the constitutive almost like it's a skin type, you know, it's our genetic pigmentation, where your facultative pigmentation, that's more of a skin condition that we have done to ourselves. So there's different types of lighteners and brighteners out in the industry that will either work for both of those or some that will work just for one on there as well. And then when Caitlin was talking about the eumelanin and the pheomelanin, kind of think about a eumelanin, definitely how it's just gonna be that brown or black pigment. So typically comes from genetics as well. But when we go through the dark pathway and we go through the light pathway, you'll be able to see how those make a little bit more sense on how the melanocyte is either producing that black brown pigmentation or how it's producing that yellow or red pigmentation. So this next slide is pretty much just going to summarize exactly what we went through in the beginning of the presentation. So we have, once the melanin has been produced, it's going to put them in the little packets, which are called the melanosomes. So thinking about this is the melanin is going to be the ingredient that's going to be put into those little vehicles or those little cars as they're going to come up the dendrites and deposit those into the keratinocytes there also. So this is just kind of a summary of what we currently went through. And then now we're going to kind of get more into breaking these up a little bit more, and we'll start out with the melanosomes. So one thing to know about those melanosomes, and this is also a way that we utilize to kind of treat pigmentation on there. So the melanosomes, they must be transferred to the keratinocytes for the skins to have color on there. If those melanosomes cannot be transferred into the keratinocytes, then our skin is not going to see that pigmentation. It's actually going to stay a lot more lower into the epidermis. So that pigment actually has to come up to the surface of the skin in order for us to see it on there as well. However, there's different ingredients that could potentially cause cell toxicity, and it really focuses, or it really can possibly damage the dendrites or the melanosomes. So if you've ever had a patient or a client that has been on a higher percentage of like hydroquinone, and they're typically a higher Fitzpatrick, and they've been on this high percentage that they're getting from overseas, somewhere else that's not FDA regulated, what that can potentially do, that hydroquinone, is it can weaken and damage the dendrite. So if it weakens and damages the dendrite, those dendrites, instead of them sitting up, they kind of take a shift and they lay kind of going down on there as well. So as they lay down, it doesn't suppress the melanocyte function of it producing pigmentation. It's still producing pigmentation. However, instead of it depositing pigment into the keratinocytes as they're coming up, it can actually take a nosedive down and deposit melanin into that dermal epidermal junction. So if you've ever seen a client that has what we consider as achranosis, so it's really that pigmentation that you don't see at the surface. You see it a lot lower into the skin. That is typically an extremely hard pigmentation to address with topical ingredients also. So Caitlin, a second ago, she did mention how we, so there is going to be one melanocyte that is responsible for producing melanin for 36 keratinocytes. So a lot of the times when we do kind of go through this presentation, we do get a lot of people that are saying, well, I don't think that's true because you have your darker Fitzpatrick's, or you have a darker skin tone or darker skin color. So it is true that one melanocyte is responsible for depositing melanin into 36 keratinocytes. However, what is going to determine the skin tone or the skin color all depends on those melanosomes. So you will notice a darker skin is going to have a larger melanin or melanosomes, and there's going to be 200 per cell. Where someone who is a lighter skin tone, they're going to have less of them, and it's going to be much smaller. So this is what determines the skin tone or skin color, is the size and amount of melanosomes on there as well. So it's not really how many melanocytes they have, it's actually the melanosomes that they have. And then I'll have Caitlin kind of talk through this as well. So even though that is pretty universal for everybody, we throw a wrench into this.
Yeah, so even though it's probably different than what you were originally taught, that those with darker skin colors have more melanocytes, and again, those are the cells that produce pigment. It's not that, it's the number and size of melanosomes that make different skin colors. Now, to take it one step further, especially if you're treating a lot of Asian or Hispanic skin types, there's something called a tyrosinase positive and a tyrosinase negative melanosome. So if you notice, there's a wide variety of skin tones and colors even within these different ethnicities. So you might be treating an Asian skin type, and you know, she presents with a Fitzpatrick 2, but she is going to pigment like a Fitzpatrick 4. Or you might have a Fitzpatrick 4 who comes in, but you can do really intense treatments. And the reason for that is that they may be a tyrosinase negative or a tyrosinase positive, which means that some of those melanosomes, even though there's a high quantity of them, they're actually clear and they're not pigmented with, they're not pigmented in general. So they'll actually be clear in the inside. And you can't tell by looking at somebody whether they have tyrosinase positive or tyrosinase negative melanosomes. This is a concept that is still being explored, and there's really no rhyme or reason. We do know that it does affect your Asian and Hispanic clientele the most. But what this really teaches us is that we can't look at Fitzpatrick as just a standard guideline. You have to make sure that you err on the side of caution, especially when you're treating ethnic skin types, and you do baseline treatments to understand where they're at, and then gradually increase your treatments from there. So even if someone presents with a low Fitzpatrick, you won't know if they have tyrosinase positive or negative melanosomes. So you want to start with something light before you move your way into a deeper or more intense treatment. So again, there's more research and information that the dermatology industry is exploring, and we'll hopefully find out more information on this in the years to come. But this is something to keep in mind when you are treating somebody of color, is that you can't just judge their skin by their fits. You have to make sure that you are either pre-treating with intense treatments, or you do that baseline treatment to figure out where their starting point is.
And then, so I know the biggest kind of factor, or the biggest reason why someone will see that post-inflammatory pigmentation is typically because of the sun. UVA, UVB kind of light can stimulate the melanocyte to produce abnormal pigmentation. However, just know that there's multiple reasons why our body could possibly pigmentate. So whenever our body or our skin feels like it needs to protect itself, it can protect itself from inflammation, protect itself just from heat in general. So, you know, for example, when we do kind of these deeper chemical peels on our clients, or we create this wound, or we create this damage, when we create this wound and we create this damage, we have left the skin vulnerable to possibly post-inflammatory pigmentate. on there as well. So for example, you know, as we're starting to get to more of the holiday months on there as well, you know, that's typically when we advertise chemical peels quite a bit. However, we forget to tell our clients about like holiday baking. So if we have a client that just received a chemical peel, we created that damage, recreated that kind of injury there. And then they do that holiday baking and they go to open up that oven and they don't let the oven start to have heat escape from there. That heat is going to hit the face that we just did, and that can also cause that post-inflammatory pigmentation or just general pigmentation in general. Another thing is just like really hot showers. If we have a client that loves those hot showers and their skin is compromised or something's happened to it, then we can also see that post-inflammatory pigmentation. So there's also different kind of hormones, different medication. There's that inflammation on there. So there's a lot of different factors that can possibly produce abnormal discoloration. But if we just know that our whole entire reason why we produce melanin is for a form of protection, then we can understand what we need to tell our client to do to start to protect their skin. Another thing I do want to kind of mention before we get through the rest of these slides on how we're going to address pigmentation, you may also have that client that says, you know, well, when will I see results? How long will I see results? So that is typically dependent on your customer. It's dependent on the person who's getting the treatment. The biggest thing is consistency. So if you have a client that utilizes the product, you know, for maybe every other day or 2 days, and then they stop using it for a couple of weeks, they're not going to see the results that they're looking for. For example, you know, if I'm trying to lose weight and I go to work out and I go once, but I still pay for my membership, I'm not going to lose any weight because it's all about consistency. Same thing with topical skincare as well. The other thing that you do have to take in consideration whenever you're treating a pigmented client, not just the consistency and how often they're doing it, you also have to take in consideration their cell turnover cycle. So if you have a client that is much more mature and they've had this sun damage or they've had this spot there for the last 20 to 30 years, and they have a very slow cell turnover rate, maybe it's every 40 to 50 days, it could possibly take at least 2 to 3 cell turnover cycles to completely get that pigmentation up to the surface and completely out. So a lot of the times you'll notice with Circadia, we like to not really cocktail, but we will suggest products from our aging section because they go hand in hand whenever you're treating pigmentation. So think of the pigmentation products. What they're designed to do is suppress that melanocyte activity in a couple different ways, which we'll talk about here shortly. However, I personally love to add a vitamin A or a retinol, something like the Circadia Nighttime Repair Plus. We all know that retinol and vitamin A is a cell proliferator, so it does increase cell turnover. So just by combining a vitamin A with some of your at-home melanin suppressants, you're going to see the time it's going to be much quicker that you're going to see results on there as well. So, you know, those are two big things to take in consideration. Of course, you want to address the client's cell turnover rate. If they have a slow cell turnover rate, you may possibly want to add a vitamin A to their regimen. However, if you have a younger clientele and you're trying to address their pigmentation and they have a fast cell turnover rate, you will see the difference much quicker also.
I just wanted to address something really quick on this slide too, because the hormonal aspect of pigment is something that we don't talk too much about outside of melasma, but there is such a big hormonal trigger to a lot of the pigmentation that you're seeing. There is a large umbrella hormone called pro-opiomelanocortin, and it is the umbrella hormone that also can trigger on and off your cortisol, and also can turn on and off your alpha MSH inhibiting melanin. So the hormone basically that stimulates melanin is the same hormone that stimulates cortisol. So if you are treating a client who has gone through an incredibly traumatic or stressful event like COVID, like pretty much all of us sitting here quarantined at home, and, you know, especially being in California, really not being able to open up and do treatments as you were before, those are incredibly stressful times. If you start to see a client have an increase in weight gain due to stress, you need to start to pre-treat them with pigmentation products, because if you have a stressful event, you start to see weight gain, the next trigger is going to be the hormone that produces melanin. So again, the umbrella hormone is called pro-opiomelanocortin, and it also is responsible for turning on cortisol and also for turning on the hormone for pigment. So you want to make sure that you know that all of those things are very much related, and you want to start pre-treating with these pigmentation products if you have anybody who, you know, had a spouse die or some sort of a trigger that is going to trigger these stress hormones. Okay, so when we talk about the different pathways of pigmentation, there's 4 main pathways that we want to discuss. The first is tyrosinase inhibitors. We all have heard of tyrosinase inhibitors, different tyrosinase inhibitors. There's natural forms, there's alpha hydroxy acids that will help with that. That's your main pathway. George did touch on exfoliation. Again, if we can help to accelerate cell turnover, then there's less time for that melanin deposition to happen. And for those cells that have already had that deposition process happen, you can exfoliate them off faster. So exfoliation is the second pathway that we want to make sure that we're inhibiting. The third is that hormone. It's called alpha MSH hormone, or alpha melanin stimulating hormone. And this is, as George had mentioned, where we can start to stop pigmentation from the very beginning. And again, we'll kind of dive into these deeper in the next couple of slides. And then the fourth pathway is melanosome transfer inhibitors. So when George was talking through the melanocyte and how those balls of melanin called melanosomes are starting to get deposited into the keratinocyte as it works its way up from the basal cell layer, if we can prevent that phagocytosis, or that process of the keratinocyte pulling the melanin into the cell, then we can stop or prevent pigment in that way. So those are the 4 different pathways of pigment that we'll discuss, and then we'll talk through the products and let you know which one of the ingredients that we're using is going to inhibit which one of those pathways. So looking at the dark pathway is what you're seeing here. You're seeing where tyrosine is being converted into melanin. So you want to make sure that your tyrosinase inhibitors are preventing the conversion between tyrosine to dopa, to dopa-2, to dopaquinone 3. Now, if we're looking at something as effective as hydroquinone at a 2% or under, cycled on and off, is a good way to prevent pigmentation. It's when you get above a 2%, and when you're consistently using it, especially on your darker skin types, is when you start to run into trouble. So again, a 2% or under, cycled on and off, is a very effective way of dealing with pigment. And the reason for that is that you can notice that hydroquinone actually stops the conversion between dopa-2 and dopaquinone 3. So you're stopping the pigmentation process in both of those areas, whereas your lactic, your ascorbic, and all of your other tyrosinase inhibitors are only blocking one of the conversions between tyrosine and dopa-2. So those are the differences between hydroquinone and your other tyrosinase inhibitors. But keep in mind, hydroquinone above 2% is considered to be a cytocell toxic material. So unfortunately, the more you use, the worse it gets. So if you have somebody who's using a high percentage, as George mentioned, it can actually create achronosis, which means that those dendrites are going to weep down and start to deposit melanin into the dermal tissue. The only thing that you can do to really correct that is laser. And most of the time you see achronosis in your darker skin types who aren't great candidates for lasers. So it's more permanent pigmentation. So we want to usually stay clear of that. So that's why we don't suggest using hydroquinone above a 2%.
Hi, Caitlin, we have a quick question.
Sure.
What is the time frame for the on and off cycle of hydroquinone?
I would suggest 2 to 3 months on, and then 2 to 3 months off, but I usually will overlap for 2 to 3 weeks in between. So if you're on for 2 months and off for 2 months, or even on for 3 months, off for 3 months, the 2 to 3 weeks in between the cycles, I would make sure you're using both the hydroquinone and other skin lighteners. So you have an overlap of 2 to 3 weeks. And I feel like that gives you the best results. And then it's not like you're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back and you're trying to adjust your skin to the next skin lightener. You have that overlap period.
That's great information, Caitlin. We have one more question. Is there any treatment besides laser for achronosis?
Or Fitzpatrick Force.
For Fitzpatrick 4?
So there has been some clinical studies that have been done recently on high percentages of mandelic acid used on a daily application can eventually lighten achronosis. Not to the point where it can be completely gone. In achronosis, it presents as a bluish hue, and it's a very dense blue underneath the skin where it feels like it's much deeper. And again, laser can help to blast it out. But high percentages of mandelic acid used daily can also be something that your darker skin types can handle.
Perfect. And then another one popped up. What product would you recommend in the off cycle of the hydroquinone?
We're going to start talking about some of the Circadia products, but I would definitely start to introduce other natural forms of tyrosinase inhibitors. But really also focusing on those alpha MSH inhibitors as well as your melanosome transfer. So you really want to double down on those 3 pathways while you are cycling off of the HQ.
Perfect.
Okay, so George, do you have anything to add on this slide?
No, I don't have anything to add on this slide. I think you covered everything on kind of the tyrosinase enzyme, but you know, just a quick kind of what's happening right here. If you notice, we had the tyrosine, which is an amino acid. It does get converted to DOPA 2 and then DOPA 3 through the enzymatic action called the tyrosinase. So what Caitlin was saying is traditionally hydroquinone will block this and this. So converting it, some of your actual lighteners and brighteners in there that are considered tyrosinase inhibitors would probably just block one process versus both on there. So this is the dark pathway. So if you notice here in the middle, it's that eumelanin. And we talked about eumelanin, how it produces that dark color on there. And then there's also a light pathway. But typically we just focus on fading areas that are darker on the skin on there. So this is exactly how a tyrosinase inhibitor is working. So, you know, Circadia, we did talk about hydroquinone quite a bit. So Circadia is actually a hydroquinone-free line. We know that hydroquinone is effective, but we do know that people are highly addicted to it on there, which can potentially create more damage. So Circadia is completely hydroquinone-free, and we have alternatives that will treat the pigmentation just as effectively, and there's really no need to cycle on and cycle off. So the next kind of pathway, or the next thing that we have to kind of look at is just exfoliation in general. So I do want to take a second while we're on this slide to talk about exfoliation between the difference between enzymes and acids. So we do utilize enzymes and acids in the aesthetic industry because we get similar results on there. So enzymes, they are protein that are designed to dissolve or digest other protein. However, enzymes will only digest what is called a desmosome. So if you look at this little desmosome right here that's holding those keratinocytes together, think of that as like a snap or even a button that is holding the keratinocytes together. So enzymes, they only digest the desmosome. One of the key benefits of enzymes, though, is it doesn't create a wound in the skin like an acid or a chemical peel. So enzymes, they're not going to trigger fibroblast activity. So fibroblast cell is a skin cell that's responsible for producing that connective tissue. So enzymes, they don't create inflammation in the skin like an acid would because it doesn't create that wound. So an acid in general, what determines the strength of an acid is going to be the pH of it. So if our skin sits at that pH of a 4.5 to 5.5, anything lower than that is going to be considered an acid. However, we typically use like lactic glycolic acid. So lactic glycolic acid, they all have a positive portion to it and a negative portion. So the positive portion of the acid is going to connect itself to the negative portion of the protein, and that's what kind of pulls it apart. So one of the key benefits of us pulling apart protein by utilizing an acid is it's going to create a wound in the skin. As it creates that wound in the skin, that is what stimulates fibroblast activity. So you really have to determine when to utilize an enzyme and when to utilize an acid whenever you're treating all skin types and all skin conditions. The way that you're going to determine when to enzyme and when to acid is going to be based on the amount of inflammation and that client's sensitivity. So if I have a higher Fitzpatrick, I'm not going to do a deep chemical peel because that is going to create the wound. I'm going to treat their pigmentation more with digestive proteins that can possibly be also anti-inflammatory. For example, the Circadia enzyme that we do have called our cocoa enzyme, it does have some anti-inflammatory benefits to it, but it's effective at removing those surface protein. So all of our melanin, as it's kind of coming up to the surface, that's what you're seeing at the surface. So if you just remove those surface proteins that is housing the melanin in there, that's when you're going to see a difference as far as a brightening type of treatment. However, you determine how much exfoliation you want to happen at that time. Anything on this one, Caitlin, or do you want to jump to the melanogenesis and alpha MSH?
Yeah, so with this slide, the exfoliation slide, it's great to see this because it's a stagnant view of what the skin looks like at one point in time. But as George mentioned before, when we wake up in the morning versus when we go to bed, our cells are never in the same place. They're constantly moving and constantly working their way towards the surface of the skin. But anything that makes a living cell a cell, the Golgi apparatus, the mitochondria, everything is actually pushed out to become extracellular matrix. So by the time you get up to this surface, it's this highly cornified cell that's just that the protein and the keratin and pigment. So when you're exfoliating, that's how it's really addressing that second pathway of pigment. You can do an immediate exfoliation and remove the proteins that are housing melanin and get a really nice brightened look. So we always suggest to keep in the arsenal of your treatment options something like an enzyme that George mentioned, our cocoa enzyme, raspberry, or even our citric enzyme. That's going to give instant brightening or even a lighter peel. So we know that when we do a facial and we get those instant gratification results, it's not that we're changing the melanocytes' function and activity. That all comes within 24 to 36 days after you start using those lighteners. But you can get those immediate results if you're doing something, as George mentioned, with exfoliation. So I always suggest for people who are treating using a brightening facial, or even the first time you have a client who comes in, you want to make sure that you can retain that customer. That's our biggest issue, right? You can spend hundreds of marketing dollars, you can be the best networker, and you can get people in your door at least once. That's not the hard part. The hard part is getting that person to come back time and time again and making sure that they're coming in at a good once a month or even once every other month. So if you have good instant gratification products in the arsenal of treatments, I always start my first time clients off with a brightening facial because you get those instant results and it's more likely that you're going to be able to retain that customer moving forward. So we can kind of talk through some of those products as they come. But that's really why exfoliation is a key secret weapon for you in your treatment room. Okay, so the next slide is just talking through the process of melanogenesis, and this is now the third pathway of pigment that we're addressing. So if you were to step outside and expose your skin to UVA and UVB rays, think of the surface keratinocytes as little gossipers. So they have the ability to communicate with other cells. So your surface keratinocytes are exposed to that UVA and UVB radiation, and it releases a hormone called alpha MSH. That's alpha melanin stimulating hormone. And think of that hormone as the key that unlocks the melanocyte and starts that factory to start up and starts the process of creating pigment. So your alpha MSH inhibiting peptides, or ingredients that are going to inhibit this process, they actually sit in that receptor and it prevents that alpha MSH from even turning the pigmentation process on. So these are newer concepts in skin lightening. There's continuous advancements within this melanogenesis process. And you'll see that there are newer peptides that are actually working together to stop this process. But you do want to, at the time, make sure that you're using other forms of lighteners alongside your alpha MSH inhibiting peptides.
All right, so now we're just going to kind of get into some of the products on treating pigmentation. So if you guys have any questions on pigmentation in general, now is a good time to kind of chat those in. But now let's talk about some of the Circadia products that are considered to be our brightening products, or they're in our brightening line of the Circadia brand. So the first product that we do have here, it's one of our cleansers. So this is called the Almondola Milk Cleanser. So kind of the biggest takeaway of the Almondola Milk Cleanser, the way you want to describe this to your patients, your clients, it is a dairy-free brightening milk cleanser. So the type of milk that we're utilizing, it's not coming from any type of animal derivative. So it is a sweet almond milk base. So what's great about the almond milk base is it makes it an amazing carrier to house lactic and mandelic acid that's going to sit a lot more superficial. So utilizing this to address a pigmented client, it's going to do a couple different things. So lactic mandelic acid, so it's a 1.5% each, 1.5% lactic, 1.5% mandelic. So these two alpha hydroxy acids, they will remove surface proteins. So right there, you're addressing one pathway of pigmentation just by removing surface proteins. However, we're utilizing an acid that is now going to increase cell turnover. So not only are we removing those surface proteins, we also promoted cell turnover, so the skin cells are come up to the surface a lot quicker. Two other kind of key benefits of that lactic and mandelic acid is they are considered brightening. So they also are tyrosinase inhibitors. However, two kind of key differences between lactic and mandelic acid is the lactic acid is also considered to be hydrating acid. So we can hydrate the skin in a couple different ways. So we can hydrate the skin with ingredients that are considered to be like emollients, like your oils. The way that those oils hydrate the skin, it's not that they push hydration into the skin. What they do is sit a lot more superficial and they slow down transepidermal water loss. We can also hydrate the skin with ingredients that are considered to be like humectants, like hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid is going to bind environmental moisture and pull moisture back into the skin. However, we can just signal our body to pull hydration to the upper layers of the skin cells. So lactic acid is going to stimulate your body's natural glycosaminoglycans, and that's going to help to hydrate the skin. However, mandelic acid in here, even though it is exfoliating and brightening, it also has the ability to kill that P. acne bacteria. So Almondola Milk Cleanser, it is great for someone that's dehydrated, dry, but ideally it's for your pigmented clientele. You will also notice that we do utilize the Almondola Milk Cleanser for more of like your dry acne, or just somebody that gets acne and they deal with that surface, they still deal with that post-inflammatory pigmentation as well. So we will utilize the Almondola Milk Cleanser in a couple different ways when we get to the mixology portion of the presentation. So the Almondola Milk Cleanser, it can be utilized as an at-home treatment mask as well. So it doesn't have to be on the skin for a minute and then removed. It can actually be left on the skin between 8 to 12 minutes with steam as well. So a lot of the times I like to utilize this as an at-home treatment mask, or use it as a treatment room booster as well. So mixing this equal parts to any of your exfoliating masks, like the Australian Superberry Antioxidant Mask, you're adding lactic and mandelic acid to that mask. It's also great to utilize in conjunction with some of our enzymes as well. You can utilize this over top one of our enzymes and it adds an alpha hydroxy acid to it.
George, we have a question. Is the Almondola Milk Cleanser going to be too rich for somebody that has combination skin?
So I would say no on that, but it's all about the time that they're going to utilize it. So, you're always going to have that client. So as far as it being too rich, is it going to be comedogenic? No. It's, what's weird about our kind of cleansers, think about them as far as like generational goes. Your more mature clientele, they're used to cleansing creams, they're used to cleansing balms. Your younger generation, if it didn't foam, it didn't work. So I wouldn't really say this is a cleanser as far as it being rich, like a moisturizer or something like that, because when you go to remove it, it's going to come off with water and a towel. However, if you're familiar with like our vitamin veil cleanser, that possibly will leave a layer of vitamins that's going to get on the skin. So if they're thinking of something like that as well. But, I'm the same way as far as I'm not really young, but I do know that I need something to foam in order for my mind to realize that it's working. So the way that I personally use Almondola, especially in my beard area to exfoliate the skin, I will mix it with the foaming cleanser. So sometimes I will mix it with the micro exfoliating honey cleanser because that's going to add the foaming action to it. Or I will also mix it with like the lipid replacing cleansing gel as well. So that is also another option. If you still want them to utilize the benefits of the lactic mandelic acid, you can just add a drop or two of this to any foaming cleanser.
And then we did get one more question. Is this a cleanser that men can use as like a shaving cream, shaving milk to shave with it?
So I wouldn't utilize it to shave just because it does have that lactic mandelic acid, but I would utilize it almost like an aftershave if you wanted to. But so me personally, what I do utilize to shave, I utilize like, so if you notice like our foaming cleanser, like the lipid replacing cleansing gel, if you just start to kind of whip it up with the brush, you get a lot of foaming action to it. And that's typically what I utilize. Another thing is my beard area. So I am light complected, but really thick, dark kind of hair, especially. And so get a lot of post and some ingrown hairs as well. So when I go to shave my face, I utilize salicylic acid, but I utilize our white willow and juniper clearing mist. So I spray that down on my skin before I even apply like a shaving cream or a shaving foam. So I've never tried almondola milk cleanser in the form of shaving, so I can't give a true answer on that. Caitlin, do you have anything on that one?
I wouldn't. I would say if you need something where you need a close shave every day, the Vitamin Veil Cleanser is probably your best option. It's great for underarms and also for legs for women. So I would say that would probably be a better option.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we'll kind of move on to another product that you'll find in our brightening line. So this is called our Licorice and Burberry Brightening Mist. So the Licorice and Burberry Brightening Mist, I want you all to think of this as a preventative way of treating pigmentation, but also a corrective way of treating pigmentation. So the Licorice and Burberry Brightening Mist, it's going to be in a very hydrating base. So the base is called Mary Moist, and it's a plant-derived hyaluronic acid. However, the way that this is going to address pigmentation is we have different botanicals and different extracts that are going to be natural tyrosinase inhibitors. So that is going to slow down melanin production on there as well. However, we have an ingredient in here that is a peptide that's called melanostatin 5. So melanostatin 5, what it is an alpha MSH inhibitor. So if you remember a second ago, Caitlin had talked about the key that is going to unlock the factory to start producing melanin. So this is going to prevent that key from unlocking the melanocyte from starting to produce pigmentation. So what's great about the Licorice and Burberry Brightening Mist, this can be utilized all day long. So, typically most of our lighteners and brighteners work best in the evening. However, since this one has more of a protective component to it, it can be utilized throughout the day. It's also great for clients that do get that post-inflammatory pigmentation just from different kind of like just heat or stress or hormones, because if you continue to spray it onto the skin, then it can slow down the ability of the melanocyte from producing pigmentation also. Caitlin, do you want to go through Bright White Serum?
Sure. So the Bright White Serum is designed as a spot treater, and do keep in mind in the very beginning of the presentation, when we were talking about constitutive and facultative pigment, the Bright White Serum is going to work on both. So if you have somebody with freckles or somebody who doesn't want to lighten their constitutive pigment, this isn't necessarily the best product. This is going to lighten both. We are using tetrahexadecyl ascorbate, which its trade name is BVOSC, and we're using this at such a high percentage that it's one of the best and most effective skin lighteners, but it's an oil-soluble vitamin C. So you're getting a very powerful antioxidant protection as well. But again, at this high percentage, it's amazing for brightening and lightening. You also have Sim White, and this is a wonderful tyrosinase inhibitor, but again, also delivers that antioxidant support. And the Marubian Stem Cell, this one is great for all skin types, but most importantly, it helps to activate the skin's self-defense system. So this is going to be more of your preventative ingredient. And then again, the resveratrol, which is the Regufade. This is the key ingredient in this product when it's mixed or it's in the same formulation as the BVOSC. So the Regufade is going to be the ingredient that's working on both constitutive and facultative pigment. So you do want to make sure that this is applied only to the areas of dense pigment that you're trying to lighten. And you can use this one daily. All of our lightening products are suggested to be used at night because we want to always remember that even though we're trying to deal with unwanted pigmentation, pigment is our body's defense mechanism against environmental UVA and UVB damage. So if we apply any of these skin lighteners during the day, you have to make sure you're diligent about your SPF and reapplying your SPF. So because the bright white serum is so powerful, we suggest that this is a PM application only.
And I just want to kind of clarify. So the reason why this is a spot treat product, you know, our whole goal as licensed professionals and estheticians, when we are treating pigmentation, it's not to provide full face lightening. It's to fade the spot and fade that lesion there. So, you know, this one, it can cause full face lightening if it was applied full face. However, that's never our goal or our objective. It's typically to fade that one area or that one lesion to blend into the rest of the skin on there. So since it does have a highly concentration of those alternatives to hydroquinone, you will utilize this in a PM type of setting, but only spot treat to the areas of concern. Whereas the next product that we're going to talk about, which is called the White Veil Brightener, this would be a full face application. So think of this one as a moisturizer or a lotion with your traditional brightening ingredients in there. So some of the key ingredients that you really want to kind of highlight on here, you know, we do have the niacinamide in here, which is a B vitamin. So you want to make sure that your client is not sensitive to any vitamin Bs in general. However, niacinamide, it is another kind of powerful tyrosinase inhibitor, but it's kind of dual action or dual functioning. So it is also a melanosome transfer inhibitor. You'll notice that we do utilize the niacinamide, not just in the White Veil Brightener, but we utilize it also in our acne line, our acne range as well. Then we're also utilizing different peptides. So you'll notice with the Circadia line, or as you go through the Circadia products, you know, we really start to address different symptoms of a skin condition or a skin type. So with the White Veil Brightener, we are starting to address some symptoms of that pigmentation. We have tyrosinase inhibitors, melanosome transfer inhibitors. However, our whole goal with the Circadia line is to produce healthy skin. It's not, you know, we can have a client that has no freckles, no spots, but is their skin completely compromised and now super irritated? It could possibly happen. So you'll notice with the Circadia line, we also add other ingredients like your antioxidants. So we don't just create the damage and create the trauma on a client's skin. Our whole goal is to get healthy looking skin. So the White Veil Brightener, it's traditionally just utilized in a PM setting, but you can think of this as it's also going to help to slow down moisture loss. At the same time, it's going to tyrosinase inhibitor, so decrease melanocyte activity. So we do have a couple before and afters that we'll have kind of Caitlin talk through what their treatment plan looked like on them.
Okay, so go ahead.
Sorry, Caitlin. We got one quick question going back to the bright white serum. Would you recommend using that in the overlap with a hydroquinone product, or would you say that would be too aggressive or too strong?
No, that's fantastic. I would suggest the bright white serum and or the White Veil Brightener. You can use both of them while you're cycling off.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so this is an 8-week study that we did. Now, a little bit of backstory for this person. You would, just seeing these pictures, probably identify her as a smoker, but she actually taught hot yoga. So if you're doing hot yoga or teaching and you're hot yoga and you're constantly in the state of heat and also working out, it can create a lot of advanced aging because you're actually creating a lot of ATP in that scenario. And if you're creating too much energy, you're actually creating more superoxide, which can create accelerated aging. So you'll notice that we're treating her for pigmentation, but in her after photos, you'll notice she's got a nice softening of her skin. Her fine lines and wrinkles are starting to diminish, and that really just kind of heavily aged look is starting to soften. And we had her on a pretty aggressive home care regimen. We were having her use the Amendola Milk Cleanser. We had her using the Licorice and Bearberry Brightening Mist, the White Veil Brightener, and the Bright White Serum. And then we had her use the vitamin A boosting cream, which is a product we didn't talk about yet, but she was using that 3 to 4 times a week as well. And that's a 1% retinol acetate. So that was really helping to force those cells towards the surface faster. But the combination of all of those products for home care, along with our Myocyte Plus, which is going to help to really soften some of the fine lines and wrinkles around her eye area and also on her forehead. Where we had the most traction is we did a very aggressive peel series. We'll talk about our Mandeli Clear Peel, but it's a modified Jesner. It's 7% lactic, 7% salicylic, and 7% resorcinol with a 9% mandelic acid, followed by a 2.5% retinol booster. So we actually did 2 of these peels within the 8-week series, which is something that we wouldn't necessarily recommend, but we knew her skin could handle it. And then we did some microneedling in between. So this is something that you can use these different modalities and these different chemical peels to get these kind of results within a short period of time, like 8 weeks. Now this is just a before and after of our Mandeli Clear on its own. This is really to highlight what this peel can do. There was no home care or pre-care that was given to this patient. And this was 3 of our Mandeli Clear peels spaced out 1 month apart. So we did 3 layers Mandeli, 3 layers Vitamin A Accelerator, and we did them 3 treatments spread across 3 months.
So this is pretty much what the Mandeli Clear Peel is on here as well. So we have a whole entire kind of peel webinar that we recently did. So I will make sure that Callie has the YouTube link so she can send that as a follow-up email to everybody in case you're interested more on just the chemical peels in general. However, the Circadia Mandeli Clear Peel, it's a pretty gentle peel, but you determine the strength with the amount of layers that you do. So Mandeli Clear Peel is going to be a self-neutralizing peel where you can do up to 3 layers. Best way to think about it, instead of it being a modified Jesner, think of it as a half Jesner and a modified Jesner. So traditional Jesners are typically a 7% cell, a 14% cell, 14% lactic, 14% resorcinol, where this is a half Jesner. It's 7% salicylic, 7% lactic, 7% resorcinol, but it has a 9% mandelic acid. So earlier we talked about the benefits of mandelic acid. It does have the ability to remove surface protein, increase cell turnover, but it also is brightening and it's also going to be antibacterial as well. So this product is typically paired with or as a system with our vitamin A accelerator. So the way that it works or the way that you utilize it is you'll do all the amount of layers of the Mandeli Clear that you're going to do. Then once you say you do 2 to 3 layers Mandeli Clear, you're going to space them out 3 to 4 minutes in between. Then you will apply either 1 to 3 layers of the vitamin A accelerator. Most clients, they only need about 1 layer of the vitamin A accelerator. But when you're starting to get more of those thicker, highly keratinized skins, that's when you can determine on how many additional layers you want to do. Okay, so that kind of wraps up that first kind of skin condition or that skin first category that we're going to talk about. So now we're going to get into the acne category. And Caitlin, did you have anything to add on the Mandeli Clear?
No, only that it is my favorite peel. It is designed specifically for skin of color. So if you have your higher Fitzpatrick's or your Asian skin types, it's really the only peel that I feel safe using on my skin. And again, it's because it's the modified Jesner, so you have half strengths of all of those acids.
And Caitlin, we have 2 more questions. Can the Mandeli Clear Peel be used on a client with ochronosis? And does this peel have downtime?
You definitely can use it on somebody with ochronosis, but again, the key is consistent application of mandelic acid versus in a peel. And again, the peel's in an ethanol base, so it's designed to create damage versus be more antibacterial in utilizing it for its repair function. So I would say, yes, you're not going to increase the amount of damage, but it's not going to be as functional as a daily application. And there is significant downtime with this peel. So doing 3 layers of Mandeli Clear followed by 3 layers of the vitamin A accelerator which is what we suggest, and that's where you max out on layers. It will create full face peeling. You'll often experience sheet peeling, where your post-peel kit is a mandatory post-peel product.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna try and kind of hustle through some of these next slides, especially through the theory portion, because we wanna make sure that we can get to a lot of the product knowledge, which I'm sure all of you are wanting to get through. So when we're looking at the anatomy of an acne lesion, we want to make sure that we're addressing in our treatment options and home care products things that are going to address inflammation, normalizing desquamation, reducing bacteria, enhancing healing, slowing down your sebaceous activity, and most importantly, eliminating and controlling that follicular congestion. So acne is very much a hereditary skin condition. So when you're thinking about acne, you're most of the time born with these two hereditary components. The first one is called retention hyperkeratosis. And this is where you have an extra buildup of cellular debris. And as these cells are trying to move their way towards the surface of the skin, they actually get stuck on and they don't exfoliate off like a normal skin would. And that is unfortunately a very hereditary piece of acne. So as George was mentioning, when we were talking about pigmentation, your cells are dividing, they're moving their way to the surface, and that's all happening within your epidermal dermal junction. But in this blown up picture of this pore, you can actually see that the epidermal dermal junction dips down underneath the hair bulb. And when you have retention hyperkeratosis, you have excess cellular debris that's building up and it's not getting exfoliated out. So it starts to build this, this keratin plug in the infundibulum, which is this funnel, like, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, in this funnel right on, thanks George, on the top of the pore. So it's a funnel that starts to accumulate these dead cells. Now we know that P. acne bacteria is a normal bacteria that lives in the bottom of the follicle, and we know P. acne bacteria is anaerobic, so it thrives in an environment without oxygen. So if you actually are closing up that infundibulum, you're creating an anaerobic environment that is now P. acne bacteria's best environment to live in, so it starts to multiply. You also have another hormonal and hereditary piece to acne, which is sebaceous activity. So hormones are going to trigger more sebum to be pumped into the follicle. Now that sebum is being pumped in at higher rates, it's not being able to go anywhere because of that buildup of cells on the surface. And now we know that P. acne bacteria's favorite food source is sebum and dead skin cells. So you've created a buffet for this P. acne bacteria. It starts to break down all of that congestion into fatty acids and glycerol. Fatty acids start to irritate the follicle wall, which promotes white blood cells to come in because it thinks there's an infection. The white blood cells are coming in now, creating more irritation. And all of this is happening in this congested follicle. So you want to, again, help to reduce inflammation so there's less irritation on the follicle wall. You want to normalize desquamation so you can actually rupture out that impaction and you can remove that surface buildup. You want to reduce bacteria. The P. acne bacteria is one of the root causes of acne. You want to slow down or reduce the sebaceous activity so there's less of a food source for P. acne bacteria. And again, also eliminate and control that follicular congestion within the infundibulum, or that plug that is holding everything into the follicle. So everything that we're doing for acne are going to address all of these different points. But acne is something that is never cured, it's only controlled. So since two of those pieces are so hereditary, if you are, my son, for instance, when he was born, he had really bad neonatal acne. So for me, I know that he's probably going to have acne as a teenager and possibly into his adult years, because I also suffered from terrible acne when I was younger. So knowing that I suffered from acne, he had neonatal acne, those are two triggers that I know that I'm going to have to make sure he watches his diet. It's not necessarily milk or dairy or meat. People say that those are two triggers. It's not the dairy or the milk, it's the hormone that is pumped into the animal that actually gets into our system that can affect acne. So you have to be careful about those things, and also making sure that you're trying to be preventative for those hereditary pieces. So knowing that you can never cure acne, that you can only control it, also means that you have a lifelong client. If you can really clear their acne using some of these different resources, one, your acne clients are going to be your best source of referrals. And two, they're going to be your client for life, especially if they know that this is something that they're going to have to continuously work on. So moving into the products, George will kind of go through each of the retail products and which one of those pieces it's going to affect.
Yeah, so we do have quite a bit of different products to kind of go through for this acne category. But another thing before I get into the products that is in the Circadia acne line or the acne range, I want to also talk about products that are in the Circadia sensitive rosacea categories on there as well. So the very first thing, as Caitlin just kind of mentioned, is inflammation. Inflammation is a #1 kind of something that you have to address whenever you're treating your acne clientele. So before you even start addressing like the overactive sebaceous glands, the bacteria, you want to get that inflammation under control. So a lot of the times with clients, I do recommend that we put them on products that are called like a Circadia Chronocalm. So I know that Chronocalm has ingredients that are natural anti-inflammatories that will reduce inflammation. But the biggest thing that they're going to do is reduce discomfort. So a lot of the times that people that are clients that do have that inflamed acne, they feel it and they want to kind of get rid of it pretty quickly. Or if they feel it, they're going to poke and pick at it. So if I can put them on a product that's designed to reduce inflammation, reduce redness, and kind of provide an analgesic effect, that's going to allow that inflammation to go down, and possibly a week or two after that, I can put them on more of the ingredients that are designed to either dry the skin down or increase cell turnover or remove surface protein. So just note that, first goal, first objective is assessing the amount of inflammation that's associated with your acne client. Once you determine the amount of inflammation with that client, then you can move on to other products. So we have a couple cleansers that we do recommend to utilize when you're addressing an acne patient or an acne client. The first one that we have is called Micro Exfoliating Honey Cleanser. So Micro Exfoliating Honey Cleanser, it's not just beneficial for an acne clientele. It's actually going to be universal for all skin types and all skin conditions. The best way to think about this cleanser, think of it as a 3-in-1. So it's going to be an effective cleanser. So you can utilize this to cleanse the skin AM and PM. So it does foam, so you get that foaming action. However, it's also going to be a daily exfoliant. So the way that it's going to exfoliate the skin is with an organic beeswax. This organic beeswax is going to be solidified and cylindrical. So it's solid and it's round. However, the more pressure and the more heat that is applied to that beeswax, it's also oil loving. So it's going to reduce extra lipids from the skin. So the way you want to think about this cleanser and how it's going to address an acne patient is it's going to cleanse, it's going to exfoliate and reduce extra oils or extra lipids from the client's skin. The next cleanser that we do have for our acne patients or our acne clients is called Cleansing Gel with Salicylic Acid. So the Cleansing Gel with Salicylic Acid, it is your beta hydroxy acid cleanser, and it does foam, so you get quite a bit of foaming action to it. So we are utilizing a surfactant that is going to effectively remove dirt, debris, and makeup from the skin. However, this also has a 2% reagent grade salicylic acid. So the salicylic acid that you're going to find in here, it's going to be 98.9 to 99.9% pure unbuffered acid. So there's no buffing salts in this acid. So that's kind of what makes it a huge difference between somebody that is purchasing a salicylic acid cleanser from over the counter somewhere It's the type of acid that they're utilizing. This utilizes a step up from medical grade salicylic acid, which is called reagent grade. Just know that it's 99 or 98.9 to 99.9% pure unbuffered acid. So the way that it's going to treat the skin may be a little bit more aggressive compared to something that someone is purchasing from over the counter. So the way that I like to think about this is the cleansing gel with salicylic acid. Your retail size is a 4 ounce, whereas the retail size of our other cleansers is an 8 ounce. So this is half the size because it's meant to be used half the time. So it's not a daily cleanser. This is an every 2 to every 3 days. And you also want to determine on the clients, you know, if they're already dry, this cleanser is going to completely dry them out. So make sure this is really good just for your oily, acne prone. It's not really super beneficial for your dry acne. For dry acne, I recommend something like the almond oil milk cleanser. But someone that's thicker, oily acne, this is going to be perfect for that. The other products that we do have in the same range is the White Willow Juniper Clearing Mist. So this is going to be that functional mist that I had briefly talked about earlier, how I utilize it to kind of underneath my shaving cream or my shaving gel because it does have the ability to kill P. acne bacteria. However, the white willow and juniper, it also has natural anti-inflammatories. So it does have a very natural form of salicylic acid, and that is coming from the white willow bark and the meadowsweet flower extracts. So that's going to effectively control bacteria. But the other key benefit of the white willow juniper clearing mist is it's also anti-inflammatory and it supports wound healing as well. So this product is great to be utilized all day long, or it's also great in the treatment room post extractions. It's also great for your male clientele as like an aftershave or a pre-shave. It's also great for your younger clientele, especially that hormonal type of acne, kind of younger teenage skin, especially if they're in a lot of sports or they're doing a lot of activities and you know they don't have, you know, they're not going to cleanse their skin after they just worked out or after they sweat. They can utilize this to spray on their skin after a workout. They can spray it on their skin if they are going camping, something like that, because it will control bacteria. Then we also have two products that I want to kind of discuss them kind of together, but also separate. So we have a daytime control and also a nighttime control. So even though this one does say daytime control, it's going to be beneficial utilizing twice a day, AM or PM. So you don't just have to utilize this in the morning setting. However, the daytime control, another way to think about it, think of it as like a mattifying moisturizer. So you are going to get some hydration with this product. However, the way that it's mattifying is it utilizes a signaling peptide that's called Regusep. So Regusep is what's going to decrease oil production by decreasing testosterone uptake in the skin. More testosterone typically is going to be more oily production that's going to be happening as well. So as that Regusep is decreasing oil production, this also has natural forms of salicylic acid to control bacteria, also provide some free radical damage or protect the skin from free radical damage as well. However, it is also going to protect the skin from that post-inflammatory pigmentation. So it does utilize that same ingredient that we talked about earlier, which is the niacinamide. So that B vitamin is now what's going to control the pigmentation. So a lot of the times when our acne clients are looking in the mirror, they're seeing this dark spot that has been there from an acne lesion from 2 to 3 months ago, or they see it just coming up now because they stimulated melanocyte activity about 2 months ago. So if you are treating a client and you see them pigmentate, that typically happened about maybe 3-4 weeks ago. It's not some, so if I was to create damage on my skin today, I'm not going to see pigmentation unless it's like a scab or increased blood flow to the surface. I'm going to see the melanocyte or the damage from that melanocyte about 3 weeks from now on there as well. So the daytime control, it's a great product because it's going to help to hydrate the skin, but it's going to decrease oil production, kill P. acne bacteria, and also anti-inflammatory. Then we also have what is called that nighttime control. So nighttime control, it is going to be a spot treatment only. So think of nighttime control as it's going to be a benzoyl peroxide. So it's a 5% BPO. However, we're utilizing a special form of benzoyl peroxide that's encapsulated and also time released. So it provides little mini doses of BPO or little bursts of benzoyl peroxide throughout the night instead of getting just one full dosage on there as well. This one is recommended only 2 to 3 times out of the week. As we all know, any form of oxygen or like benzoyl peroxide could potentially dry the skin out a little bit. And then the last product that we're going to discuss in this category is going to be our Spot Stop. So Circadia Spot Stop, it is also another spot treat product. However, this one is going to address more than just the acne lesion. So one of the biggest benefits of the Circadia Spot Stop is it provides an analgesic effect to the skin and it cools the skin down. So there is a little bit of camphor in here, and the camphor is what's going to kind of cool the skin down and numb it out. So this is ideal for somebody that has that extremely painful type of acne, that cystic acne, where it just completely hurts every time they move their mouth, every time. So the key benefits of this one, instead of it just addressing kind of like pigmentation or just addressing kind of that acne lesion, it's going to address the inflammation, but also cool the skin down. This product, in addition to it being great just for spot treat acne lesion, it's also great to utilize on any type of like mosquito bites or bug bites because it will completely soothe that area pretty much instantly. All right, Caitlin, do you want to go through some of these before and afters?
Hey, George, we just have a couple questions here.
Sure.
One of them is on the white willow and juniper clearing mist. Would that be good to spray under a mask to help with maskne, or even on a mask? Obviously, I'm referring to like a surgical or cloth mask.
Yeah. No, so, you know, whenever you're kind of treating maskne, so maskne is also considered to be that acne mechanica. So acne mechanica is typically acne that's caused from friction. And then with also that friction, it's also there's that heat that's getting trapped in there. And then also there's bacteria from when we're breathing, bacteria is coming out as well. So the white willow juniper is actually perfect in between any of those. But another thing that I would recommend is something like creating like a semi-occlusive underneath as well that will reduce that friction. Of course, you want to keep the area cool, control bacteria, but even something like Circadia post-pill balm being a semi-occlusive is great to make sure it's underneath the mask as well if they're not an acne-prone client.
Perfect. And then
I think
this
you
kind of
just
answered
answered
that,
it.
but
The
a good
second question.
combination for maskne for someone who never breaks out.
So
Yeah. So we even did a whole entire kind of webinar just on acne in general, and we discussed the different types of acne. So Callie, remind me, that's another YouTube video I got to give you so you can send out the link.
And then I got someone asked one more question, back to the honey cleanser. If someone is allergic to bees, can they still use the honey cleanser?
So definitely would not recommend if they do have like a bees allergy or a honey allergy. You know, I wouldn't recommend it just because we are, you know, the sourcing of it does come from a honey bee on there, the beeswax and the honey as well. So in addition to us just utilizing the beeswax for its ability to remove surface protein, there's also honey that's going to be in there. The honey that's in there is mainly our natural fragrancing system to it, but honey in itself also is going to be antibacterial and also can hydrate the skin. So I would not, if they are any sensitivity or allergic to bees or just honey in general.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so this is a 3-month before and after. We really focused at first on reducing inflammation. We couldn't go too aggressive with her at first, only because of her skin type and also because of all of the inflammation and congestion that she had. So we started off slowly with using our ChronoCalm, which is one of the products that George mentioned in the beginning. It's not necessarily designed for acne, but it really helps to reduce inflammation. So once we had the inflammation under control, then we could start to introduce other more aggressive ingredients. The first month was focusing on the white willow and juniper clearing mist, the ChronoCalm, and the daytime control for home care products, and then utilizing the cocoa enzyme and the oxygen treatment for professional. We really stuck within that wheelhouse for the first 3 to 4 weeks. And then we slowly started to introduce treatments like our alpha beta gel-based peel. And we also started to introduce home care products like our nighttime control, our spot stop, and even our vitamin A gel. The vitamin A gel is a 1% retinol in a gel base. It's designed as a spot treater. You do have to be a little bit more cautious of using vitamin A for acne. It can be very helpful, but you do need to remember that it's going to get worse before it gets better. You're increasing the cell turnover, which is going to help to ultimately remove that impaction. But unless you can remove the follicular congestion on the top, it's going to get worse because you're basically building up that food source for P. acne bacteria. So you want to simultaneously be removing the keratin plug as you're increasing cell turnover to get everything to come out faster. But the vitamin A gel, if used appropriately, can be really a missing link in treating acne with Circadia. So again, starting off really conservatively, anti-inflammatories, white willow and juniper clearing mist, daytime control, and then working your way into some of our more potent products like our nighttime control with BPO and our vitamin A gel. And starting off with your cocoa enzyme and your oxygen, a product that had not launched when we were doing this, this trial was our marshmallow whip hydrating mask. That can be great as a really nice healing mask to be using in the treatment room. Okay, and this is a before and after of the oxygen. Now, this is not after one treatment. We do get that question pretty frequently. This was being treated once a week for 4 weeks straight. And the after picture, you can notice some visible vein definition in her neck. The last treatment that we did was an oxygen followed by our firming peptide mask. And the firming peptide mask you can't do on active lesions because it creates a lot of really intense constriction, and that could possibly irritate or burst an active lesion, and then you have secondary infections with things or with bacteria that can get spread on the surface. So you want to make sure that most of that congestion has decreased. But the firming peptide mask, it helps to detoxify the skin. So if you do have somebody who has more of that pebbly congestion that you can see on her before picture, but not active papules and pustules, then the firming peptide can be a really nice detoxifying treatment option. So we did the oxygen first, followed by the firming peptide. And the firming peptide is what is creating that visible vein definition in her neck. What we're doing is creating that intense compression. And then when we remove the mask, it allows for that blood flow to finally go into the face, and it's delivering oxygenated blood. And as that blood is then being circulated back to the heart, it pulls toxins out with it. So it's something you wouldn't necessarily think of for acne, but it's a great treatment for, again, that kind of congested, pebbly looking acne.
All right, so that sums up our acne category. So now we're going to kind of jump into skin and aging. So is there any other questions on the acne category that we just went through? All right, so just type them in there. So we're going to kind of get started. So before we get started, just on the acne, or not the acne, on the aging category, and we talk about the different symptoms of aging that we have to address. I really love this image or this picture to really show what the difference between a young versus mature skin looks like. So as you look at the top part, you know, there's a couple things that you do want to pay attention to. So notice where that dermal epidermal junction is. So as we're younger, with this dermal epidermal junction, they have these high peaks and valleys that you see here as well. As we start to age, or as we start to get that damage and as we start to mature, those high peaks and valleys in that dermal epidermal junction starts to flatten out. So one, that is what's going to create some shifting in the skin. You'll start to see like those gel areas on there as well. And this is kind of like a real image of what it looks like. So whenever we're addressing a aging skin, let's kind of just take this in kind of a nutshell before we kind of break it down in a little bit more. So Caitlin did mention how we are really never completely curing anybody whenever we're treating them with topical skincare products. We are always just slowing down the symptoms or suppressing the symptoms. So we do have to identify what the symptoms of an aging skin are in order for us to know what we have to treat or what we have to address. So some of the key differences between a younger versus mature. When we're younger, we have a very fast cell turnover rate. So that's one symptom. Another one is we have lots of energy production. So our body produces ATP energy, or adenosine triphosphate, especially within our skin cells. So our skin cells need that ATP energy, or that adenosine triphosphate, to function as a healthier skin cell on there as well. Another symptom is fibroblast activity. So our fibroblast cell is that skin cell that's responsible for producing connective tissue. So if once we start to get a certain age, there's a lot of clinical studies that say once we hit the age of 36, that's when we really start to see the damage that we incurred in our 20s and our teens on there as well. So fibroblast cells, our fibroblast cells are the skin cells that are responsible for producing that connective tissue, that collagen, elastin, fibronectin, hyaluronic acid. So it's pretty much not functioning as we start to hit a certain age on there. So whenever we're treating a mature skin, we have to increase cell turnover as one. So utilizing ingredients like retinols, vitamin A, lactic, mandelic acid, that's going to create that tissue wound, but it's also going to increase cell turnover. We also have to utilize ingredients like the Circadia switch treatment, which utilizes pyruvic and succinic acid that are designed to provide energy to the skin, re-energize the skin on there as well. Another thing that we could use is different like signaling peptides. So in example, signaling peptides like matrixyls. So matrixyls, they communicate, or they signal to the fibroblast cell to produce that connective tissue again on there as well. So if we can just understand what are the symptoms of aging skin, we can really start to identify how we can reduce the symptoms of aging skin. So we'll kind of get started with the causes of aging. So we'll just have kind of Caitlin go through intrinsic and extrinsic, and then we'll kind of talk about them in detail.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. So extrinsic aging factors are things that we're exposing our skin to, and we have some form of preventative measures that we can use to prevent extrinsic factors. So your UVA and UVB exposure, your free radical damage, and glycation are all considered to be extrinsic factors. Your intrinsic factors are things that we have less control over, things like mitochondrial dysfunction and telomere attrition. These are different cause and effect scenarios that are happening inside of our body, and it's just a natural, unfortunate process of aging. So we'll go through a few of these, and first we'll talk about UV exposure. So I always refer to UVA as UV aging and UVB as UV basal cell carcinoma. So UVB has a much shorter wavelength, but it has a much higher energy orbit to it. So it can't penetrate down into deeper layers of the skin, but it can radiate surface keratinocytes, and that can create a lot of mutations, and that's what's creating potential skin cancer. So when you're looking at the DNA damage of UVB rays, you're really looking at, oh my gosh, I can't even think of the word, my brain just escaped me. Excision, what is George? What does excision repair? Dimers, thank you.
Yeah, dimer right here.
Sorry, I just had twins, and so sometimes I still have like that mommy brain or lack of sleep brain. So I'm trying to think of the word of dimers. So when you expose your skin to UVB rays, you have these dimers that happen in your DNA, where you can actually see those ladder rungs coming together vertically versus horizontally. Now, our skin and our body can go through the natural process of excision repair, which it can come in and repair the DNA. And our body can do that very rapidly, and it can do it very successfully. It's when you have exposure after exposure after exposure where your skin can't keep up with that excision repair, and that's when those mutations can occur. And that's all happening again from UVB. So that's the rays that you want to be very cautious of for different carcinomas. UVA is a little bit different. Again, we refer to this as UV aging. And this has a longer wavelength, so it has the ability to radiate keratinocytes that are lower in your skin, but they're they're much weaker. They don't have the same energy behind them. So it's that long, more insidious process that occurs where you have long-term damage. So with You know, if you have a client who comes in and they say, one day I woke up and I just looked like I was more mature and I don't like the texture of my skin, I don't like the pigmentation or the wrinkles, all of that is due to UVA exposure. So this can cross-link proteins in the dermis and within the epidermal dermal junction, which actually creates a stiffening of your collagen and elastin. So you want to make sure that you are preventing a lot of this. They say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound in care. So the younger clients that you have, you want to make sure that you're constantly talking about and pushing preventative measures. Proper SPF is so, so critical. And we can get into the difference between physical blocks and chemical blocks. It doesn't really matter as long as they're getting an SPF on the skin on a daily basis. That's the most important part of proper sun protection. So preventing UVA and UVB damage. UVB creates cancer, UVA creates aging. So this, speaking of twins, this is a twin study that was done many years ago. Twin A had significant sun exposure. She also partook in some in smoking and other activities that create oxidative stress and free radical damage. Twin B had minimal to no sun exposure, was also better at preventative care. So you can see that regardless of genetic factors, being twins, you can see what your extrinsic factors can do with long-term exposure. So significant aging can be seen on twin A versus twin B. So when we talk about free radicals, we have to think about what exactly a free radical is. So a healthy, happy atom is going to have paired electrons. So when you're looking at a free radical is going to have unpaired electrons. So its only goal is to find a match or find its pair. So it's going to steal an electron from a healthy atom, and then it itself becomes whole, but then the one it stole it from now becomes a free radical. So it's this really like Tasmanian devil that kind of goes through the skin and wreaks havoc. An antioxidant has an extra electron that it can donate to pair up a free radical. And that's going to be your first line of defense for excessive free radical damage. I always like to tell people that one drag of a cigarette has 10,000 free radicals. And that's a deficit that you'll never be able to make up from. So you're just constantly bombarding your system with all of these free radicals that, if you think back to the process, it's all of these unpaired electrons. There's not enough antioxidants in the world that can help to pair up all of those free radicals. So you want to have that be one of your first questions when treating somebody with aging skin. You know, are you a smoker? Are you a sunbather? Because if they are, there's really not much you can do. You can help to prevent some of the damage, but you have to be able to manage their expectations and know that you're not going to be able to get the results that you would if they weren't out in the sun and also weren't smoking.
So I just want to kind of briefly kind of go through this slide really quick before we get to the product knowledge portion. So I know we kind of went through it a second ago. So we do have those extrinsic factors, which is like UV exposure, free radical damage, and then also glycation. So this is also something that we do to ourselves. So just by preventing these three right here, we're going to see a difference in the client's skin. So with UV exposure, just a properly formulated sunscreen is going to be ideal. Free radical damage, we all know the gold standard of fighting free radical damage in the industry is a properly formulated vitamin C that has not been oxidized. Glycation, however, it's you can use topical ingredients to slow down the signs of glycation or reverse it. However, glycation is all about our diet and the foods that we consume. So we can have glycated skin, or we can have glycated organs, we can have glycated tissue on there. But kind of whenever you're identifying glycation versus a traditional aging clientele, always pay attention to the way that the wrinkles are going to form. So your wrinkles should always form the opposite direction that your muscles contract. For example, as my forehead comes up, my wrinkles are going to form the opposite direction. So traditionally, somebody that has a glycated skin, they almost have like cross-hatching of these wrinkles, whereas your traditional vitamin A's are not going to address it. Your traditional lactic acid's not really going to address a glycated skin. You want to put them on ingredients that are designed to reduce the advanced glycation end units from the Circadia glycation line. The intrinsic factors, this is something that is happening internally just with aging in general. So mitochondrial dysfunction, the way that we can reverse that is by utilizing ingredients that stimulate or increase ATP energy, or adenosine triphosphate. So like the Circadia switch treatment is amazing for this, but also an at-home product would be our Revitacite complex as well. Then the other one, which is the telomere attrition. So a telomere, if you kind of looked at that DNA that we had saw earlier, kind of think a telomere is like what protects the DNA. So best way to think about it is like the end cap on our shoelaces. So if the end cap on our shoelaces was to shorten, eventually it's not going to protect your shoelaces anymore. A telomere is what protects your DNA. So a telomere attrition, so every time that our DNA does get damaged, it's going to shorten that telomere. And so now it doesn't have the same code that it had when it was younger on there as well. So utilizing ingredients that not only protect you from UVA, UVB, but also protects your DNA from getting damaged as well. So that's just kind of an overview on all those in a nutshell. So now we'll kind of talk about the different products that we have. So we do have our vitamin C reversal serum. So the vitamin C reversal serum is going to be a potent antioxidant. However, not all vitamin C's are going to be the same in the aesthetic industry. So you will notice that the type of vitamin C that we're utilizing in this product, it's called magnesium ascorbyl phosphate. So it's completely different as far as the way that it works in the skin compared to your traditional L-ascorbic acid. So L-ascorbic acid has been utilized in the aesthetic industry because it is a great antioxidant. It reduces that free radical damage. It's a tyrosinase inhibitor. However, there's a couple of downfalls for formulating with just a traditional L-ascorbic acid. One of the biggest downfalls of L-ascorbic acid is in order for you to stabilize it, it has to sit in a low pH. So if we have our skin that's at 4.5 to 5.5, and we have an L-ascorbic acid, full formulation about a 3.2, it's going to completely irritate and it's going to cause some sensitivities, some reaction on some certain skin types and skin conditions. Another downfall of that traditional form of vitamin C is it has a pretty short shelf life. So typically 3 to 4 months, and then that vitamin C starts to change colors in the bottle, and then it has a bad odor to it. So what has happened is L-ascorbic acid has oxidized. So if you apply an oxidized L-ascorbic acid onto a client's skin, it's actually causing free radical damage versus reversing free radical damage. So this product, it's a little bit different. What it is called magnesium ascorbyl phosphate. So it's that same ascorbic acid as we just talked about a second ago. So it does help to fight free radical damage. It's going to brighten the skin. It's going to protect your collagen and elastin. However, there's two minerals that have been attached to it, and that's the magnesium and phosphate. So this is going to do a couple different things. One of the things is it allows us to make this full formulation in a very neutral pH, about a 7 to 7.2. So since it's going to be a completely neutral pH, it can actually help to rebalance a compromised skin. Another key benefit of the magnesium ascorbyl phosphate is it's going to have at least an 18 to 20 month shelf life now. So you don't have to get rid of it as quickly on there. However, this is the way it's going to reverse free radical, or the way it's going to reverse an aging clientele or protect it, is it provides a lot of antioxidant support. In addition to the antioxidant support, it is also going to be in a hyaluronic acid base that's going to help to bind environmental moisture to the skin. All right, Caitlin, you want to go through the SPF?
Sure. So I will say before we get into the SPF, we are in the works of creating 2 new SPF products. One of them is going to be a physical SPF. We are looking at also incorporating color adjusting spheres. So one of the issues with formulating with zinc or titanium is that they're really difficult to work with. In order to have the proper amount of zinc and titanium, it is really going to white out on the skin. There's actually been some recent testing of SPFs with zinc and titanium properties to them that actually fail secondary testing. Over 70% of them failed secondary testing, and the reason for that is that they start to pull back on the percentage of zinc and titanium to make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing on the skin. So we are working on making a zinc-based product, but having some sort of a color-adjusting spheres to cover up some of the whites. And then we are also making a reef-safe formulation of the Light Day sunscreen. This one is going to stay a product. It is a fan favorite for those who've used it. They love it. But we are making a version of this that does not have the octanoctate. So we are using avobenzone, octanoctate, and octocrylene, which are 3 of the most effective forms of chemical sunscreens on the market. We're able to use them at a much lower percentage because we're using an award-winning photo-stabilizing peptide called Solistay. Solistay won Most Innovative Peptide Technology a couple of years ago. And what this does is it basically takes all of those excited state molecules and quenches them to neutral before they have the potential of creating heat in the skin. So if you've ever had somebody who says, oh, I can't use a chemical sunscreen because I have an allergic reaction to it, it's not necessarily that they're having a reaction to the chemicals that are in the sunscreen. It's that those chemicals, they diffuse the energy from the sun as heat into the skin, and that's creating a sensitivity. So the Solistay eliminates that, but it also allows us to use these 3 chemical sunscreens at a fraction of the percentage and still giving them an SPF of 37. We had originally tested this product to come in at an SPF of 30, but because of the Solistay, it came back with an SPF of 37. So that's why it's this odd number on our packaging. One of the other downfalls of using zinc or titanium is that it's designed to sit on the very outer layer of the skin and physically reflect UVA and UVB rays. Now, if you wanted to formulate something that had more of a well-rounded, all-encompassing formulation, you can't formulate with other hydrators, other antioxidant protection ingredients, because those are innately designed to penetrate deeper into the skin. So with this formulation, we're also using the grapeseed stem cell, which is incredibly hydrating. It has really nice regenerative functions to it, but it also is going to deliver wonderful antioxidant support. The 2 other key ingredients that we were insisting on using in this formulation is lipochromin 6 and preventhelia. So lipochromin 6 is a stem cell, or I'm sorry, it's a peptide that is going to protect against reactive oxygen and reactive nitrogen species. And these are 2 devastating free radicals that affect our skin from an intrinsic perspective. So when we're talking about your intrinsic and extrinsic factors, the lipochromin 6 is going to help to fight against those internal free radicals and the damage that they can create. Preventhelia is also going to help to prevent some of those intrinsic factors, but more importantly, that telomere attrition. So every time your DNA duplicates and it creates copies, those telomeres start to shorten. And with excessive damage, you can have excessive shortening of your telomeres. So preventhelia specifically helps to prevent telomere attrition, but it also protects against damage from UVB rays. And we know that UVB is UV basal cell carcinoma. So not only are you protecting against the factors of aging with the lipochromin 6, but we're also helping to protect your DNA, which is very, very critical when you're thinking about a properly formulated sun protection. So again, we are using the avobenzone, octanoctate, and octocrylene. We're able to use them at a fraction of the percentage and eliminate the heat component of chemical sunscreens with the addition of Solistay. We're adding additional antioxidant protection with the grapeseed stem cell and the lipochromin 6 for those internal free radicals, and also protecting your DNA from UVB rays with the preventhelia. This is the most well-rounded SPF I have ever used. It's one of my favorite products of Circadia's, and it's a 3-in-1. So if you have clients who maybe are on a budget and they can only purchase one product, this is your moisturizer, your SPF, and your antioxidant serum all in one. If you have a busy mom on the go who doesn't have time to do, a 5-step regimen, this is again a 3-in-1. So you can just apply this daily and you're getting all of those extra benefits from just one product.
Caitlin, we have a question. She wants to know if you've tried the light day sunscreen on people that are sensitive. She has a client that says she's allergic to the sun and that the sun is causing her client to break out, but then hours later it calms down on its own.
So I would just say it's something that you have to patch test. I would definitely say that the Solar Stay can help to eliminate a lot or a majority of your issues with sun sensitivity and sensitivities to sunscreens, but it's all very much an individual basis. So I would patch test first and make sure that it's not going to create any irritation and see how it goes.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, perfect. So those are the two products that are typically utilized best in more of that protective type of scenario on there versus a corrective way. So remember, whenever we're treating any skin, we always want to protect and then also correct, just kind of the philosophy of the Circadia brand on there. So now we'll start to talk more about the corrective products that Circadia has that are utilized in more of a reparative type of function. So the first kind of category that we do have is called, it's our vitamin A products or our retinol products. So Circadia does have 4 different products that do contain vitamin A or retinol in them. So we have 2 that look identical and kind of sound identical. However, they're completely different, kind of based on a few key different changes in each of them. We have nighttime repair and nighttime repair plus. So I just want to kind of talk about how this is going to address a few of the symptoms of an aging skin. So both of these products, they do contain retinol and they also contain matrixyl sin 6. So the retinol in here is utilized in the nighttime repair at a 0.3%. So with the retinol, it's a lower dosage compared to the other one. So think of this as more of a preventative product, but it's also going to be corrective. So we do utilize retinol because what it's going to do is increase cell turnover. At the same time, it's going to thicken the skin. And when I say thicken the skin, it doesn't like add more collagen and elastin. The way that it thickens the skin is by increasing those peaks and valleys. So if you remember back when we saw the that slide where we talked about the mature versus the young slide on there, and we noticed that there was these high peaks and valleys from a young skin. So one of the key ingredients that helps to maintain these high peaks and valleys is going to be retinol or vitamin A. So the way that this is going to address a couple symptoms of aging skin is the retinol is going to increase cell turnover, maintain high peaks and valleys, at the same time a matrixyl sin 6 peptide. So this is a signaling peptide that does signal to the fibroblast cells. So kind of think of what this is doing. The way that it's going to signal fibroblast activity is almost like it's telling your fibroblast cell you're wounded, you're damaged. So we do chemical peels on a client to damage the tissue, wound the skin, because we do know that is also what is going to stimulate fibroblast activity. So this is not creating tissue damage, but the matrixyl is what is going to stimulate fibroblast activity, especially collagen, elastin, fibronectin, hyaluronic acid. So these 2 ingredients, they do work synergistically together to reduce a few of the symptoms associated with an aging clientele. Then just notice, the other ingredients that you see in here, they also contain more protective products as well. So we want to, our whole goal is that healthy looking skin, not really just focusing on a couple of the symptoms. We also want to protect and maintain the results as well. So key difference, nighttime repair plus. This one has a 0.5% retinol, where the other one has a 0.3%. However, this also has an ingredient called roxasomes that does help to repair DNA damage. So this one, I really think about it more for mature clientele versus the younger clientele. All right, Caitlin, you want to go through Revitacite and Myo, and we're almost done with this part of the presentation.
Sure. So Revitacite is a very underutilized product. It was designed to work with our Switch dermal rejuvenation system, but I think this is our most effective anti-aging corrective lotion within our collection, especially when you use it with our vitamin A boosting cream. It's great as a vitamin A alternative. So we are using an ingredient called XOT, which is a fantastic vitamin A alternative. It really is designed to increase cell turnover. It can also stimulate cell exfoliation and desquamation, similar to vitamin A, but again, without the downtime. So this can be great for your pregnant and nursing moms. It can be great for your client who is on a prescription retinoic acid and refuses to get off. But you know that with a retinoic acid, you're not getting all of these extra benefits of like the matrixyl 6 and some of these other innovative ingredients that we're incorporating. So you can have them on both. We're using a mitochondrial form of superoxide dismutase called EUK134. This is the ingredient that is really one of the powerhouse ingredients that is the one that's slept on the most, because no one really talks about how ATP production, which again is the universal currency of our body and of our skin, it also creates a lot of intrinsic damage. So if you are ever treating an ultra marathon runner or somebody who does a lot of long distance, low impact exercise, you'll notice that their skin ages very quickly. And you would usually associate that with, oh, they're outside for hours at a time, running outside and in the elements. But a lot of it has to do with this chronic output of ATP. And with ATP production comes the production of superoxide, which is a devastating free radical. That's one of those intrinsic factors. So EUK134 is a mitochondrial form of superoxide dismutase. So it actually quenches out those superoxide molecules that are creating a lot of damage inside. So it is a fantastic ingredient, one that people don't really talk about too much. We also have the oat beta glucan that's great for stimulating the immune support of your skin, the matrixyl 6, which is clinically proven to reduce the depth of the wrinkle by 35% over a 6-week period. We have that in there at a full 2%. And we also have the chronocyclin. So this is a peptide that is designed to enhance your circadian rhythms. So how perfect is it to be used by Circadia? It's going to help to enhance vitamin D expression. So vitamin D is very important in the health of our skin, but most of the vitamin D that we get, it's actually from unprotected exposure to UVA and UVB rays, which we just talked about as being really negative to our skin. So this actually helps to enhance that vitamin D expression without sun exposure, and it optimizes the repair function of your skin between the hours of 9 and 11 at night. So you're optimizing repair and enhancing protection. You have this in all-in-one product. Again, it's antioxidants, anti-aging, and hydrating. If you wanted to have the best, most upper echelon regimen for your client, I would suggest being on the Revitacite complex and adding in the vitamin A boosting cream 2 to 3 times a week, and then starting to increase that up to 4 to 5 times a week. Now, the Myocyte Plus is our most effective anti-aging product, but it's designed to be a spot treat only. So we're incorporating 10% matrixyl and 10% matrixyl 3000. These are first generation matrixyl peptides, but they're designed to fill the wrinkle from the inside out. It stimulates collagen, elastin, fibronectin, laminin 5, and hyaluronic acid. So these are going to work as Botox in a bottle. If you've heard that term a lot from other manufacturers, but unlike Botox, this is actually going to help to prevent future wrinkles from forming. So we know with Botox that there is a temporary paralysis of the muscle because you're not allowing acetyl-CoA, this large protein, to come together, and that's basically getting cleaved, so it's temporarily paralyzing how the muscle is working. We're using 2 different peptides called SNAP8 and inulin. And these are basically going to inhibit the message from being received by the muscle to make that contraction. So if I were to be sitting, and hopefully at some point we can have face-to-face conversations without wearing masks, but if I were to be sitting in front of you and I was to tell you to raise your hand, but I am covering my mouth while I tell you to make that muscle movement, my message to you is being inhibited. If at the same time I'm telling you to raise your hand, I cover my mouth and you cover your ears, now my message is being inhibited from both the pre and the post synapse. So the SNAP-8 is working on the presynapse, the aniline is working on the postsynapse. So my message to you to make that muscle movement happen is not coming across clear, therefore you're not able to make that muscle movement. So that's how SNAP-8 and aniline are working as Botox would work. Once you stop using it, those muscles are going to start to fire the same way that they know how to fire before. So it's going to start to create more of a, not more of a wrinkle, but the wrinkle mechanism is going to start to activate again. That's why we're incorporating the Matrixyl and Matrixyl Syn 6, so they can start to fill the wrinkle in the meantime. So it's preventative, it's also corrective, and you get some amazing results in just a very short period of time. So we do suggest to go through one full bottle. One bottle should last you 6, if not up to 9, and I'm sorry, am I trying to say weeks, but months, because it's a spot treat only. You're going to use 2 to 3 drops, and that is going to cover crow's feet, 11s, nasolabial folds, all of the areas that you would create a wrinkle or muscle contraction will occur is where you want to apply this. And again, 2 to 3 drops is all you need. We suggest to use it both AM and PM to begin with, because during the daytime is when you're talking to people, you have more of that muscle contraction that's happening through just different conversations. So you want to apply it during the day, but also at night in the beginning. And then once you've been on it for 2 months, then you can start to bring it down to just 1 time a day. So if you put it everywhere on your skin, the Matrixyl and Matrixyl 3000 are great ingredients, but it's really somewhat wasteful because you don't need it everywhere. You just want to, again, apply it in areas of expression and onto your wrinkle.
We have a couple questions here. Let me see, what was the first one? Can you use the nighttime repair or the nighttime repair plus with Retin-A?
Yes. You can, like a prescription.
I believe that's
I'm
what she's
assuming,
speaking
yeah,
of,
that's what she was referring to.
You can, but my suggestion would be, again, to cycle on and to cycle off. When you're using a high prescription retinoic acid, it creates a lot of inflammation. So it creates chronic inflammation, similar to if you were to hit your thumb with a hammer, the first thing that happens is your skin turns red and starts to swell. If you're using high percentages of retinoic acid for extended periods of time, it will actually create slight swelling on the surface of the skin. So when you pull off of it, your skin kind of goes through this deflation period, and that's when I would suggest to have crossover with your nighttime repair or nighttime repair plus for the week or so as you're pulling yourself off of retinoic acid. So those would be the times that you could use both of them together, but I wouldn't necessarily think about using them together like on a weekly regimen.
Okay, and then I'm going to kind of combine these two. What home care protocol is your favorite firming for the neck? And then would the Myocyte Plus work good for necklines?
The Myocyte Plus is a little bit overkill, I think, for the neck. What I would suggest to use is the vitamin A boosting cream, and you can do that. You could do that 3 to 4 times a week. And then you could also incorporate either the nighttime repair or the Revitacite and cycle off of the vitamin A boosting cream and onto the nighttime repair, or you can use the Revitacite and vitamin A boosting cream at the same time.
Okay, and then last one, will the Myocyte help with non-existing wrinkles, so preventative?
Yes, it can help with preventative, but I would say a more effective prevention would be the nighttime repair or the nighttime repair plus.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
All right, so this pretty much sums up the theory portion of the presentation. Kelly and Julia, do you guys want to take a 5-minute break, get our skins pre-cleansed, and then we can move into the actual hands-on portion?
Sorry about that. Yes, everybody, I'm sure, needs to use the restroom, and go ahead and cleanse your face if you haven't already done so. And we'll meet back at, let's see, it's 12:08, so roughly 12:13 or so, and we'll move forward with the treatment.
Also, you guys can grab like a bowl of warm water and a couple towels. You'll need to get that ready if you haven't so already. All right, perfect.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you in a jiffy. All right. We're almost ready here. I'll wait for George and Caitlin. Everyone enjoying the class so far?
It was good to see you sitting on the, up in the corner. You disappeared towards the end, but it was great to have the physical connection.
Oh, thank you.
I can't wait till we can have the real physical connection in a real classroom setting again. Hopefully it won't
Exactly.
be too long.
We're so excited about this treatment. This treatment really kept us feeling very good during, we were both evacuated for 35 days. So I gave myself this treatment many times and I was very happy to have it.
If you're in California, you know the air quality has been less than ideal. So just the environmental stress now more than ever, it's really important to take care of your skin. I love the Circadia, the Mixology kit. We took just a couple of those staycation kits and it really helped keep our skin healthy and happy while the air quality was so horrible here.
I'm in California. It was horrible.
Yeah.
Okay, is everyone ready to get started?
I am.
I think so.
So you'll notice I just started to share my screen. These are some of our mixology options. We're just going to run through a couple of our favorite ones, but you can we can send this to you. We have a full mixology presentation that we'd be happy to send you as well. And mixology is a huge part of our collection. And the reason for that is that most of us who work at Circadia, we all have owned our own spas or understand that having a lot of inventory or having a collection where you need to have 16 different products to complete one facial, it's a lot. We're all in this industry to help to work on the skin and really connect with people, and inventory management is, at least for me, the last thing that I want to be dealing with or to be thinking about. So we created this mixology so you can have a limited amount of SKUs that you have in your back bar, but you can really have infinite amounts of treatment options. And you can really customize your treatment specific to the person that you're treating. And even if you are seeing somebody on a monthly basis or a weekly basis, you can actually change the treatment protocol and customize it specific to their skin at that time. And that really is where we feel that the industry was going pre-COVID. We go to a lot of different ingredient supplier shows, similar to how there's aesthetic shows. There's also ingredient supply shows that we go to. And the trend prior to COVID was all refocusing on customization. Our clients and the consumer was really looking for something that was going to deliver something more impactful for them. Everyone was looking for high quality and customization and not just buying something to buy it. They wanted it to be suited for them and getting a little bit more out of their purchases. And creating these customized menu options is something that you can really deliver on, and it creates something that they feel like is only meant for them. So the first mixology, my personal favorite mixology cleanser, is mixing the lipid replacing cleansing gel with your snow algae and spirulina cooling mask. So we suggest to do a dime size amount of your cleanser, and you're going to add in a half of a teaspoon of the snow algae and spirulina cooling mask. So you can mix those together with a couple drops of water, and then you can start to cleanse your skin. Now, if it's the summertime, George and I live in Colorado. So either winter and summer, people get sunburns. We're high altitude. People don't realize you have to reapply your SPF more frequently. And then also in the wintertime, there's a lot of clients that go out skiing, they get windburned, and a lot of the time sunburn from the sun reflecting from the snow. So if you have somebody who comes in with a sunburn, possibly they were, working out and there's a lot of heat that's in their skin, or if you have somebody who's going through hormonal changes and they have hot flashes, this is an amazing cleanser. You mix the two together. you don't really feel the activation of the cooling until you remove the cleanser. And then you have this wash of cool that comes over the skin. So that's a fantastic option for sensitive skin, but also for anyone who's going through some hormonal changes. My second favorite cleanser is, I feel like we have somewhat of a gap between the lipid replacing cleansing gel, which is very gentle, high foaming cleanser, and the highly active cleansing gel with salicylic. There's really nothing in between. So if you have more of an inflamed acne or somebody who is sensitive, the lipids maybe not quite enough, but the cleansing gel with sal is way too active. I suggest to mix a dime-sized amount of your lipid replacing cleansing gel with a half a teaspoon of your green tea mask. And that's going to create this really healing, very antioxidant rich cleanser. You still have the benefits of the kaolin clay, which is designed to pull impurities out of the skin. But now you have that kind of in-between cleanser between your lipid and your cleansing gel with sal. Or if you wanted to up your cleansing gel with salicylic a little bit further and increase it with the kaolin clay, you can also add the green tea mask to the cleansing gel with sal. Just remember that your lipid replacing cleansing gel is going to be a fantastic base for a lot of these mixology options for cleansers. The Amendola Melt Cleanser is great for your AHAs, but if you have somebody who has a nut allergy and we're using the Amendola, the sweet almond milk in the Amendola Melt Cleanser, you can use our Australian Superberry mask with the lipid replacing cleansing gel. And now you've created an AHA cleanser that doesn't have any of the nuts in them. And you also have extra antioxidant support. So all of the masks can be used with different cleansers to create different cleansing options that are going to be beneficial for different skin types.
So everybody's skin should be completely cleansed. So let me tell you a couple different mixology options that you have with the kit you have in front of you, and we will just start applying a mask onto our face right now. So you guys all have Amendola Milk Cleanser that's going to be in a small size there. So that Amendola Milk Cleanser, you can add it to your Caviar Lime, your Australian Superberry, your Marshmallow Whip Hydrating Mask. And so what you're doing is you are adding additional alpha hydroxy acids to these masks. Another mixology that you have right now for the exfoliation step, you can mix the Australian berry with the caviar lime and passion fruit enzyme mask. So that's what I'm going to do to my skin right now. I'm mixing caviar lime and the Australian superberry mask. However, you can also add the Amendola Milk Cleanser to any of those exfoliating masks to increase it on there. So I will have Caitlin just talk about the benefits of me mixing these two products together as I'm putting it on my face.
So the Australian Superberry Antioxidant Mask contains lactic and mandelic acid, and it also contains 3 berries that are indigenous to the Australian outback. So you have ryeberry, pepperberry, and munch trees. And when we were talking about free radical damage and antioxidant protection, most antioxidants work on a 1-to-1 ratio. So you have 1 molecule of an antioxidant that quenches out 1 free radical. But these second generation antioxidants that we're using in this formulation, think of it as like a lasso. So it has the ability to quench out multiple free radicals at a time. So it's very impactful for your sun damaged skin, for also like smoker skin, or anybody who has advanced aging. So again, the combination of your AHAs with lactic and mandelic and these second generation antioxidants is what we're delivering with the Australian Superberry Antioxidant Mask. When you combine it with the caviar lime and passion fruit enzyme mask, you're getting an enzyme exfoliation with your AHA exfoliation. So we're using an encapsulated and time-released bromelain, and we're using that in conjunction with a caviar lime extract, and that is going to be an AHA alternative. So most of your acids and alpha hydroxy acids in particular, they're going to denature or pull apart your proteins, whereas the caviar lime extract is going to shred the channel. So it's a different form of an exfoliation, which we would refer to as more of a gentle rejuvenator versus your AHAs. But if you're using the combination of the caviar lime and passion fruit enzyme mask with your Australian Superberry Antioxidant Mask, by the way, we know that these names are so long, like the Light Day Sunscreen Broad Spectrum SPF 37. There's no other product, I think, in the entire world that has as long of a name as that. But it's very descriptive. You at least know what you're getting with all of the names of our products. But the Australian Superberry Mask and the Caviar Mask, not only are you getting that nice sweet aroma of the berries and the passion fruit, but you're also getting a combination of AHA exfoliation and also enzymatic exfoliation.
I love adding the almondola milk cleanser to any of the enzymes, not only for the added benefit of the mandelic and the lactic, but because just the smell smells so good. And to mix it like with the cocoa, I always describe it as like a warm, like a chocolate milk almost. Like, it's just such a nice combination.
So if you're familiar with our enzymes, we have 3 different flavors, if you will, of our enzymes. We have our cocoa enzyme, our raspberry enzyme, and our zymase, which is our citric enzyme. We're using 3 different enzyme exfoliators in all 3 of those flavors. So we use bromelain, papain, and trypsin in all 3 of them. It's the amount of those 3 enzymes that we're using that's going to gauge the strength of them. But we require you to solubilize the enzymes immediately upon treatment. So you'll notice that they come in a wet and a dry formulation that you mix together right before you apply it to your client's skin. It means that the enzyme is going to act the exact same time every single time that you apply it. So it's consistent in its strength. But a lot of the times when you're removing the enzyme, especially the cocoa, if you've used them before, it's a brown color. It does have a tendency to dry a little bit on the skin. So if you use the almondola milk cleanser to remove any of the enzymes, not only is it going to help to activate the enzymes to give you one last burst of exfoliation, but it also is now adding in that AHA exfoliating component as well. It helps to loosen up the mask, and it makes removal so much easier. So it has kind of triple purpose to it. It enhances the exfoliation, it helps to remove the mask easier, and it adds an extra element of aroma. So we love to use the almondola mask to remove any of the enzymes.
And we received a question from Noelle. Do you ever add the honey cleansers to any of the masks?
You
So,
can.
I was gonna just kind of mention, so like the thing with like the honey cleanser, the lipid, the cleansing gel with salicylic acid, they are all surfactant based cleansers. So surfactants are what are designed to dissolve and break down oils. So the longer they're left on the skin, they're continuing to break down oils. So we typically don't utilize them too much unless it's going to be on for less than like 2 to 3 minutes. But if it's something that's going to be on longer, like 7 to 10, even maybe 15 minutes, you don't want a surfactant to be left on the skin for that long.
And I would suggest, instead of the micro exfoliating honey cleanser, for exactly what George mentioned, you don't want to leave them on for too long. I would suggest using the Switch hydrating cleanser. The bead is much denser and it is a little bit more rigid, and there's more beads in that cleanser. So you can get a really nice mechanical exfoliation with your AHA exfoliation if you mix the Switch hydrating cleanser with any of the masks and use it as a mechanical exfoliator, and then use either the enzyme or the mask afterwards. So you're only leaving that cleanser mixture on the skin for 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay. And then generally for these masks, you leave them on about 10 minutes because we are in a class. We are going to move it on a little.
Speed it up.
Let's move it on a little bit.
Yeah, so go ahead and start to remove. If you are using anything with an enzyme, we do suggest to use a hot towel on top of it. We know that enzymes like to be wet and warm in order to be high functioning. So the hot towel will help to keep the enzyme warm and also to keep it moist. And that's when you're going to have the most enzymatic activity. So that's with any of the 3 flavors of enzymes that I just mentioned, the cocoa, raspberry, or zymase, but also helps with the caviar lime and passion fruit enzyme mask that you just applied. We also suggest, as another pro tip, is to use the caviar lime mask as your massage medium. It has wonderful slip to it. And you also need to massage that mask on the skin very lightly for just 30 seconds or more. Because the bromelain is encapsulated, you want to burst that encapsulation to optimize the level of exfoliation that you're getting. So if you just do a light massage over the caviar mask, that will help to burst the encapsulation, but it does have really nice slip to it. So you can also use it as a massage medium. You don't necessarily want to do that with the Australian superberry mask because you can notice that it actually has some of the seed particulate in it. So you can feel a little bit of mechanical exfoliation with the Australian. So you don't want to use that as the massage. The caviar is a perfect option for that.
So now we're going to kind of get into the mask portion here. So with your all's kits that you have there, there's a couple different mixology things that you can do. My favorite is adding snow algae to the marshmallow whip hydrating mask. So that is going to be a nice cooling type of mask, but also a healing hydrating mask as well. Another option is you could also do like a second exfoliation at the end, and you can combine the marshmallow and the Australian berry mask together. So myself, what I'm going to do on my skin, it's a kind of a sneak peek. So coming soon is I am utilizing, we have a pumpkin mask, pumpkin perfecting mask that will be launching at the end of this week. So I'm gonna utilize that mask, but instead of me utilizing it by itself, I'm doing some mixology and I'm mixing it with my marshmallow whip hydrating mask. Karen, do you wanna talk about a couple of those benefits?
Sure. So the marshmallow whip hydrating mask, which is the mask that most of you will be using for this mask step, it does have a peptide in here called diffuporin, which if you're familiar with the Circadia collection, you'll know that our aquaporin hydrating cream also contains the diffuporin peptide. So everybody has a certain level of intrinsic dehydration. If you have a client, or even if this pertains to you, where you drink enough water, you're drinking gallons of water, but every single time you put any product on your skin immediately soaks it up. That is really more of an intrinsic dehydration, and that occurs when you have these aquaporin channels, which you can think of as highways of hydration that surround your cell. There's not enough water flow that's flowing in and out of the cell. And something to also remember if you're treating anybody with eczema or psoriasis, there's a marked absence of these aquaporin channels in both of those conditions. And as we just mentioned, enzymes need to be wet and warm in order to function. So if you're missing that enzymatic catalyst for both of those conditions, the your aquaporin hydrating cream and also the marshmallow whip hydrating mask can help with this diffuporin peptide. It also has multiple weights of hyaluronic acid, and it also has a lot of healing agents to it as well. So the marshmallow whip hydrating mask can be great for rosacea, eczema, psoriasis, post-peel follow-up facials, but it also cuts the activity of any of the other masks that you're using. So if you did more of an aggressive treatment and you really want to help to soothe the skin afterwards, you can use the marshmallow whip hydrating mask on its own, or mix it in with your other mask to cut the activity of any of those actives. As George had mentioned, we do have a sneak peek of our mask that we're launching on October 1st. It's called our Pumpkin Perfecting Mask with bakuchiol. And this is going to be a fantastic finishing mask that delivers really powerful antioxidant protection. But the bakuchiol is a vitamin A alternative. So it actually has some wonderful clinicals behind it that has the same DNA profile of your vitamin A, but without having the irritating components to it. So again, a wonderful vitamin A alternative. It's one of those real exciting hero ingredients that you're seeing a lot of brands focusing on. So you can do some research on bakuchiol, but it's a really great alternative to vitamin A. So we're launching that October 1st, and we are taking pre-orders, and we'll start to ship those out the first week of October. So really exciting, especially when you see how it works when you mix it with the marshmallow whip hydrating mask.
Yeah, we're super excited about that pumpkin finishing mask. And we have a question, can you get the Switch Cleanser by itself? Yes, you can. You can purchase it individually. And then is the pumpkin going to be a seasonal product?
Right now, it is launching as a seasonal product. We're just kind of gauging the interest, but if you're new to Circadia, we have our own manufacturing facility in Pennsylvania. So we have our own chemists, estheticians, all on staff, and we formulate all of our own products. it's kind of the control freak in us, but we refer to it as more of a vertical integration. So we have control over all aspects of manufacturing, which means that we can make products how we want, we can tweak them, we can pivot however we need to. So if it is something that everyone is loving, then it can become a permanent SKU in our collection. Or if we need to change it or add things to it, we have that option. Something else that is a benefit of using Circadia and being our own manufacturer is that if you have been using our micro exfoliating honey cleanser for years, you love it, but all of a sudden you get a batch that you feel is a little bit inconsistent with what you've been using before, you just send us the batch number on the bottom. We're required to quarantine and keep all of our batches for 10 years. So we can go back to that batch, we can deconstruct it in our lab, and we can find if there's any potential issues. So that is one of the biggest benefits of using Circadia, is that we own the channel from start to finish, and we're able to use the best raw materials. We're able to source all of our own raw materials, and all of the formulations that you have with Circadia are all proprietary formulations. We're very open with our percentages that we're using. We're an open book on all of our formulations, but as far as things that you're selling to your customers, they're all going to be proprietary to Circadia. They won't be able to find any of these formulations anywhere else.
And then the pumpkin is professional use only, correct?
Yes, all of our masks are professional use only. We want to make sure that you have an arsenal of products that they can only get from you. We have made one slight variation of that with our staycation kit, our caviar, lime, and passion fruit enzyme mask, and our marshmallow whip hydrating mask, which is our two most or least potent products. And we have put those in a limited supply home care option for a staycation facial, but this is just us really pivoting to the climate that we're in with COVID. So once everything returns to our new normal, those will not be options for home care.
And we will have the pumpkin in stock at our facility in about a week.
A week after October 1st.
Yeah.
Takes about a week to get here.
Yep. All right, and you guys can start the removal process. I applied the marshmallow and the snow algae, and I love that nice cooling sensation.
I did too. It felt amazing.
The cooling sensation of the snow algae is on its own is a little bit intense depending on your sensitivity level, but I love mixing the marshmallow whip and the snow algae and using that as an eye upgrade. So you can apply our emergency eye lift directly to the eye tissue, and then you can apply the marshmallow whip hydrating mask and the snow algae together, and it gives this really nice cooling and tightening sensation around your eye tissue. So if you do a lot of enhancements, that's a really great enhancement to have for any add-on for a facial.
That's a great tip.
And going back to the pumpkin, I do want to remind everyone who attended this class that we are doing a 15% off sale on the entire Circadia line. So even though we don't have the pumpkin in stock yet, you can pre-order it and then get that sale price.
You would actually have to, that product is not on our website yet because it's not launched. So if you do want that, just go ahead and shoot me or Julia an email or give us a call and we'll pre-order it for you and extend that discount.
All right, so now we just do our finishing products. So you'll notice Circadia does have standard finishing products, vitamin C as the serum, and then we typically cocktail post-pill balm and the sunscreen together. So once we apply that, we are done with our mask and Mixology facial.
Perfect. Everyone's loving it. Thank you everyone for coming. I see some people are signing off here. Got to get back to work if you're able to go back to work yet.
So for those of you who are still on, the advanced finishers, my suggestion is to have all of these finishing serums as a cocktail customized booster. So you can have them all displayed. If you've seen all of our point of purchase displays, we have some really nice acrylic displays and they have some nice backs to them. So I would feature your serums in your room, and you can take a customized serum and add it in as an enhancement. I'm all about enhancements, but you can get the little beakers from any of your, I think Hobby Lobby sells the beakers, but any science online store, and you can purchase the beakers, and you can sit down with your client ahead of time and say, okay, what are your main issues or concerns with your skin this week, or whatever you're treating them. And you can say, okay, well, it's around Thanksgiving. I'm sure we're all eating highly glycated foods. So I'm going to do 2 drops of our counter AGE. It seems like maybe you're having excessive sun exposure. So let's do a couple of drops of vitamin C and then 1 drop of Meristem. You can mix it up in your beaker and then use that as your serum booster. Again, it's customized, which everyone loves the customization aspect of it, and it can also be charged as an enhancement. So I'll always lay the serums out and highlight them as a custom infusion or a custom booster. And if you want to make those products last a little longer, if you want to get a little extra slip, then you can add in a couple of sprays of one of our functional mists. And that can also enhance the amount of slip, but you can also add 1 extra layer of customization. So this is in a brightening base, or this is in a healing base with the aloe and calendula calming mist. So we don't give the mixology enough time in this presentation. This is usually a full presentation on its own, but we're hoping to just get you excited and introduce you a little bit to the mixology options that we have, and hopefully have a follow-up class at some point that really talks about all of the different options that you have.
And I just want to remind everybody, there was a lot of information that we covered here, so much fabulous information that you might want to review. We did record this class, so if you would like us to email you a link to the recording, please just send us an email and we will do that for you.
Does anyone have any last questions that you want to ask?
I want to thank Caitlin and George again. Thank you so much for teaching such a wonderful class. I learned a lot. I know of all our clients learned a lot. And once again, you guys can give us a call and we're here to help you and assist you in any way.
And thank you so much for everyone who attended. We know how valuable your time is. And it was great to see everyone, even via Zoom. It's nice to see all of our clients that we usually see multiple times in trade shows and classes. So,
and the final, what's a good finishing mister? They're all excellent. So it's going to depend on what your concern is. So any of them would be wonderful depending on what concern you're treating. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you so much for attending, and see you all soon.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Bye.